Chapter 76. Dispersing the barrier between Odin and his son Loki took a deep breath, feeling the rising tension in his heart, and he finally told the truth that he had been unwilling to admit. Strength. These 2 days have allowed me to see through the true essence, which is strength. Hearing this, Odin's eyes narrowed slightly. Continue. In the face of real strength, all conspiracies and calculations are vain, and strength and will can crush anything. Odin looked directly into his son's eyes. Silence. The father and son just looked at each other, until Odin spoke. He was no longer filled with that terrible sense of oppression, but full of relief. Everyone has their own personality, Loki. I will never deny your thinking, even if I think your thinking is too narrow. Do you know why I thought Thor would be king of Asgard? Do you really think I'm prejudiced against you just because you're not my own son? No, everyone has their own feelings, and so do I. In the hearts of Frigg and I, you and Saul are our sons and our pride. At this moment, Odin finally said what he wanted to say in his heart, and he opened his heart. And these words shocked Thor and Loki again. What shocked the former was that Loki was not his own younger brother, and what shocked Loki was that his father knew everything about it. Loki's lips moved. Father, Odin shook his head. As I said, I have no prejudice against you, but your character is the biggest limit for you to become a king. I understand that you want to become a king because you want to prove to everyone that you are I want to be better, but you made the wrong choice. A true king, apart from having a wise and rational mind and a broad and benevolent heart, he also needs to have the strength he should have in order to protect your people. Loki, what do you think you've accomplished? Loki moved his lips, wanting to say something, but at this moment he found that, just as his father said, he never had anything other than a wise head that he thought he had. This is the difference between you and Sol. Sol may not be as smart as you, or even reckless and proud, but he can mingle with the soldiers at the bottom, can drink wine and eat meat with them, and has a kind heart. Able to protect the weak. Odin sighed. Loki and Sol didn't expect their father to have a clear understanding of their personalities, especially the former. Loki also realized it at this time. No wonder his father's original attitude was biased. Sol is radiant, but Loki can only hide under the brilliance of his brother, watching Thor enjoy all the eyes of Asgard's worship. But he got just cold indifference. He had always thought that Odin was because of his own background, but now it seems that it is not at all. Loki's thoughts became confused, his eyes were lowered, his expression was full of complexity. Thor turned his head and looked at his younger brother. He didn't expect him to be carrying such a haze. He wanted to say something, but in the end he stretched out his hand and patted him. Pat Loki on the shoulder to comfort him. After a long time, Loki managed to sort out his emotions and looked up at Odin. Why are you telling me this now? Smart, it is not hard for him to think of what the follow-up development will be. According to Loki's plan, waiting for the opportunity, or waiting until Odin is about to fall, to frame Sol to seize power, and brother killing will definitely trigger a civil strife. And with Sol's prestige and strength in Asgard, plus Odin, who knows everything behind him, secretly pushing, then the high probability of losing is himself. At that point, he became the biggest loser, the stepping stone. With Odin's character, there was bound to be something that pushed me into this plan. But now, what made Odin change all of this, and even open up his heart and talk about everything? You are very smart, Loki. You are indeed the 2 best brothers. Odin laughed, walked forward, motioned the 2 brothers to follow, and came to a stone on the beach to do it. The 2 brothers also sat beside them. Odin casually picked up the pebbles on the side. Just like when the 2 brothers were children, they floated on the lake. Looking at the ripples and splashes on the originally calm lake, Odin looked up at the blue sky. At my level, it is not difficult to see through fate. I have seen the future. I have seen the collapse of Asgard. I have seen Ragnarok. I have seen countless people die in the flames of war, and I have also seen your fate. I can't change that, so I originally had to choose between the 2 of you. The old voice was full of exhaustion. At this moment, Sol and Loki suddenly discovered that the majestic king looked so lonely at this moment, just like a lion king who was about to be kicked out of the territory. However, the appearance of Athena broke the fate, and the fate has been chaotic. But at this time I realized that she is the one who changed the fate. When I step into the Hall of Valor, she will be the protector of your growth path. Loki and Sol looked at each other, and everything was understood at this time. It was also this time when the father and son opened their hearts to each other, and the original haze and hatred in Loki's heart dissipated. Maybe he couldn't completely let go of it, but at least he wouldn't hate everything because of hatred. Father, What is the origin of that goddess? It should have nothing to do with the gods of Olympus, right? Loki pondered for a while, but still couldn't hold back his curiosity. Everything is derived from that peerless and graceful goddess. The sudden appearance of this goddess, also known as Athena, did not inevitably remind him of the Athena who had long since fallen in Olympus. But compared to the fallen Athena, this one is not just a little bit stronger. From judging from Odin's attitude towards him, it is basically certain that the opponent's strength will not be inferior to Odin, the father of the gods, and may even be stronger. If the one from Olympus had the strength, he would not have been killed by the Evernight goddess. Her origin is very mysterious, but what I can be sure of is that she must be a very ancient god, and her history is older than Asgard. Odin shook his head. He once wanted to find out the other party's identity. He followed his feet, and even went to the earth to communicate with them in person, but unfortunately the gains were not great. Back in Asgard, he also read all the illusions, including Frigga's side, but he didn't get any effective conclusions or clues. Loki's eyes moved, and Odin immediately warned after seeing this. Loki, don't have any thoughts about her. Her power is rare in the world, and there are not many people in the entire universe who can stand shoulder to shoulder with her, and the power of her is growing every day, and I have no doubts that she can easily cross to another level. When Odin first met Athena on Earth, Athena's strength was similar to his, but every time he woke up from a deep sleep, he could feel Athena's strength growing rapidly. Until yesterday, even Odin himself was a little horrified by the power contained in her body. Completely defies common sense. I suspect that her original strength should be stronger. It's just that she lost her strength for some unknown reason. Now, she should just be recovering. Odin's words made Thor and Loki dumbfounded. Wow, it's really unimaginably powerful. Saul was amazed. Well, let's shelve the idea of surpassing Athena for now. This goal is relatively dreamy. It may be possible to surpass Bart. This really makes people feel safe. Being able to get the shelter of a mysterious mansion that is far stronger than Odin. Loki only feels a sense of security. Ragnarok is a trivial matter. Communicate with them more. With the potential and talent of those children, they are already destined to become the strong of the Heavenly Father. Even I can't see clearly the end of them. Odin patted the non-existent dust on his body, stood up, waved his hands and walked towards Asgard, leaving the two brothers behind to spend time together. Odin quickly disappeared on the river beach, and the two brothers fell silent for a while. After a while, Thor looked at Loki, hesitatingly said, "Rocky, don't worry, everything is over." Seeing that Thor was going to engage in that scene of brotherly affection again, Loki felt that his skin was about to get goosebumps and quickly interrupted Thor's casting. The latter choked for a moment and said resentfully, "Well, it's good that you can see it." Although there are still some things that he can't figure out, Sol obviously feels that the original estrangement of the family has disappeared, which makes him very happy, and he can't wait to take Loki to have a few drinks. However, Loki gave a wave of backstabs with a backhand. He looked at Thor seriously. "But it is not so easy for you to become a king, and I will not sit idly by." "Loki, you know I have no idea about the throne," Thor said without hesitation. If he had been given a choice between the throne and Loki, he would have chosen the latter. As long as Loki doesn't act like a monster, he should have everything to be a king. Quality, he doesn't mind ceding the throne to Loki. Loki shook his head and said, "You are still so stupid, Sol, you don't know. I will take back what I want openly, not your humility. That is just blasphemy and contempt for all the efforts I have made." Sol raised an eyebrow. "I'm still the same me, but now I will work hard to become stronger, and then surpass you in strength and conquer their hearts. You have to be careful. Sometimes I won't stab you in the back, but face to face and defeat you." "You?" Loki smiled evilly. Thor stared blankly at Loki. The Loki in front of him made him feel strange, but unexpectedly, he felt liking and peace of mind. Regarding the challenge issued by Loki, Sol smiled boldly. "I'm waiting for you, Loki, but you have to work hard. My target is that group of scary guys." Loki knew who Thor was talking about, but he didn't feel a trace of flinching. On the contrary, this challenge made his blood boil. He wanted to be the protagonist on the battlefield, like Sol and Bart the day before yesterday, and get everyone's flowers and applause. Then, the challenge begins now. Main Sanctuary. Kyle's body stands on the roof of the goddess temple, and the wide sanctuary is still empty, but there are more birds and animals alive. In the blue sky in the distance, rows of birds flew happily and finally sank into the mountains in the distance. Kyle is making the cloth. In the space in front of her, The metal structure transformed by alchemy metal and the rare materials such as URU metal obtained from Asgard finally confirmed the construction. Groups of fluid made of metal rolled in front of him. Under Kyle's operation, these metals fused together and gradually turned into various parts of the holy cloth. Chest armor, shoulder armor, knee armor, gauntlets, and more. Rows of bronze, silver, and gold form various animal shapes, exuding a thick and sacred atmosphere. However, all the holy clothes lack some spirituality unique to the holy clothes, as if they lack a soul. Chapter 77. The creation of the bronze saint cloth and the silver saint cloth is very simple, because Athena does not have much divine power in the two saint cloths. But the golden holy clothes are completely different. Bart, Tina, Ella, and Elvis. The golden holy clothes worn by Sanzabu can only be called false holy clothes in a sense, and they have some characteristics of the golden holy clothes. Unparalleled hardness and augmented microcosm. The real golden holy garment is the real armor of light. She took back the holy clothes worn by Bart and others and rebuilt them, consuming a lot of scarce materials such as ulu metal, so that all the holy clothes in front of her, including the 12 golden holy clothes, truly showed themselves. The 88 golden holy garments, along with the life given by Athena, are resonating. The blue sky has turned into darkness in an instant, and above the night sky, the stars are shining brightly, and the 88 stars 727 are shining with dazzling light. 88 beams of light run through the sky, connecting their own constellations. Rumble, the entire sanctuary was shaking, and countless animals looked up at the starry sky. Their simple thinking did not know what power was, but their genes let them know what all was. All the creatures, at this moment, all bowed their heads, as if they were surrendering for the birth of the 88 holy clothes. The scene is gorgeous, gorgeous and beautiful. It's a pity that the audience is only Kyle. Kyle looked at the cheering saint cloths in the beam of light, full of joy. This is her own saint cloth created by herself, just like her child. She also sincerely hopes that these holy clothes can accompany the group of children to step into the top of the universe. The golden holy garment is far from the end, but a more powerful holy garment, and even a divine garment that shines with the brilliance of the gods. Under the traction of the light of the stars, each piece of holy clothing slowly floated up with the beam of light, and boxes of bronze, silver, and gold contained them, blocking the holy brilliance. He raised his head and looked at the 88 metal holy clothes boxes floating in the sky. Kyle's red lips moved slightly. Go, look for it and wait for your master. Boom. In the next second, as if the stars were blooming, the 88 boxes immediately turned into beams of light colliding with the sky, and they disappeared over the sanctuary along with ripples in the dimensional space. For Kyle, the seeds have been planted, and the next step is to wait for the flowers to bear fruit. The 8th sense, Kyle slowly closed his eyes. Next, His Majesty the Pope will act. Earth Sanctuary. Bart and a group of saint fighters have not trained yet. For everyone, the most important thing at this time is to strengthen the small universe. Everyone was located in their own palaces to meditate. As the Pope, Kyle is lying lazily in the Pope's palace in the dormitory. He swiped his phone and watched the news. Her avatar is connected to the main body. As the main body improves, her body will also grow accordingly. However, because it is an avatar, her avatar will not exceed the main body in strength and will be weaker by 2 small levels. This is the limit. The main body is about to step into the 8th sense, so the avatar is the normal 7th sense, and the small universe is considered deep enough. Of course, once the main body steps into the 8th sense, then this body can reach the strongest state of the 7th sense in one leap. The recent hot news, apart from the battle in the Gulf of California, is the kidnapping of Tony Stark. Attractive enough, Kyle naturally knew where Tony was now. With her ability, spiritual perception has long been able to cover the entire Earth, and she can see what is going on with Tony. Kind of miserable. Now she is a bit like watching a movie in her previous life, eating melons. However, she only paid a little attention to it, and didn't pay much attention to it. As for saying that she was going to save it, it was completely unnecessary. The fate of the two had no intersection at all, and their levels were not at the same level. Her attitude towards Tony was completely indifferent. At most she would eat melons. Wong. In the sky above the sanctuary, the sound of piercing sounded, and Kyle also chose to ignore it. However, it is completely different for the saint fighters in the sanctuary. Sanzabu from the Virgo Palace, Elvis from the Lion Palace, Bart from the Taurus Palace, and other people who were meditating suddenly felt a sense and broke away from the meditation. Sure enough, they saw a golden light piercing through the outer wall of the palace and falling to the sky. In front of everyone, as the light dissipated, he revealed his own Saint Cloth box. Looking at the Saint Cloth box, everyone could clearly feel the resonance coming from the box. Bart of the Taurus Palace stood up slowly, walked to the golden box, stretched out his hand to touch the lines on the box, and smiled happily at the cheers and jumping emotions coming from inside. Boom. Stretch out your hand and click on the box lightly. In the next second, a golden light shines, and the gold box automatically opens, and a huge and lifelike golden bull stands in front of you. Boom. The Taurus disintegrated and turned into parts of the armor and shot at Bart. In an instant, the noble and gorgeous golden holy clothes covered his body. What a powerful force. Feeling the majestic energy contained in the golden holy cloth, Bart's face showed surprise, but the surprise only lasted for a few seconds, and the golden holy cloth on his body disintegrated again, turning into a golden bull and standing in the golden box again. This freezes the look of joy on Bart's face. You think I'm too weak? You bastard. Sensing the disgust in the golden holy cloth, Bart grinned in disbelief. What is this? The armor disliked its master, which was so pleasing. Bart's face changed, and the happy mood 5.0 became unhappy again. Then took a deep breath. TCH, do you still want to achieve the seventh sense? Still need to work hard. Bart glared at the golden box angrily, turned around and returned to his original position, sat cross-legged, and began to meditate. Meditation is a means for saint fighters to accumulate microcosms. In addition, there are other extremely cruel practices. For example, Ella, in addition to meditation, is a planet full of flames in the main sanctuary dimension world. She has to endure the intense heat and punch out the freezing air every day until the asteroid is extinguished. Flames. Chapter 78. The prelude to the era following the trip to Asgard, Bart and the others fell into concentrating on practicing. Before breaking through to the seventh sense, no matter who it is, the speed of cultivation is very fast. In addition to the people who fit the constellation, the talents are the most outstanding group on the Earth. It can be said that there is no bottleneck at all along the way. With the guidance of Kyle, a super strong man, not to mention the speed of progress, it can be said that everyone is making progress visible to the naked eye every day. Apart from this, the rest of the Saint Claws are also looking for suitable masters. 3 months passed by so slowly. It's almost winter now. During these 3 months, everything was so peaceful that even ordinary people were a little uncomfortable. Of course, there were many supernatural incidents, but the truth was successfully covered up by the government. It is also worth mentioning that a major event occurred during these 3 months. That is, Tony Stark, who was originally thought to have disappeared mysteriously and was even judged to be dead, was successfully rescued, and then he created an incredible steel armor. It can be said that this high-tech weapon is completely ahead of modern technology for at least 100 years. In the Stark headquarters, there was a big battle with another huge Iron King armor. This battle was filmed by passers-by and posted on the internet. Possessed iron armor. Who wouldn't look forward to such an armor? At the press conference afterwards, Tony also admitted that he was the owner of the armor, and the superhero Iron Man was born at 16. Also accompanied by the classic Iron Man, the prelude to the era officially kicked off. New York Ocean View Villa. Tony returned to the villa in the car driven by Happy. At this time, the villa was pitch black. As soon as he entered the lobby, the smart butler automatically turned on the lights. With the bright lights illuminating the spacious and luxurious hall, Tony seemed to see a figure on the sofa. His footsteps stopped immediately, and he tilted his head and squinted at the figure, saying, "Who are you?" The other party was able to invade his villa openly, and even the smart housekeeper Jarvis did not respond or even warn. This has proved that the other party has modified Jarvis's network. He couldn't help being careless. Originally, we had a script prepared by you, but it's a pity that you didn't follow the script. I should be able to think of it, Tony. You let the previous plan go to waste. The visitor raised his head, black leather windbreaker, eye patch, bald black man, impressively officially director of S.H.I.E.L.D., Nick Fury. Tony frowned, walked towards the bar, tapped the bracelet twice, then poured himself a glass of whiskey casually, without looking back. I think you are not used to whiskey. The meaning in the words is obviously that I don't want to give you a drink. Fury didn't change his face, he didn't pay attention at all, but stared at Tony's back. We have been paying attention to you, Tony. Tony poured the wine, closed the bottle cap, glanced at the information on the smart bracelet on his wrist, turned and walked to the sofa opposite Fury, sat down, and took a sip of the wine. So, What is the origin of your shield with such a high level of information encryption? It actually takes me more than half an hour to crack your information. That guy named Carlson is also one of yours? Although it was a question, the tone was extremely firm. Fury folded his hands on his chest, and his posture was full of oppression. The world you originally existed in was fundamentally different from ours. What you saw was feasting and feasting, but what we saw was endless darkness and death. But the world has changed now, Tony, and you are well aware of the change in the world. So, you want to recruit me to be an agent? Tony smiled disdainfully. Let him be such a super rich man as an agent? Leaving aside the unequal status, with his personality, who would dare to make him an agent? No one can control him. Fury shook his head. What I need is not an agent, nor a rich man. I need a superhero. You're that superhero. The one-eyed sharp gaze looked directly into Tony's eyes. The latter's character itself is unruly enough, and he is not afraid at all in the face of eyes that are enough to make ordinary people fear. He even leaned on the sofa and spread his hands in a funny way. You need superhero? Believe me, the world needs superheroes. To a certain extent, I can represent the world. Fury's face remained unchanged. Huh? Hearing this, Tony looked at the guy in front of him with a mentally handicapped expression. Are you curious what S.H.I.E.L.D. is? S.H.I.E.L.D. has been established since World War II. Its appearance is to deal with unexplainable supernatural events around the world until today. Fury slightly explained the meaning of S.H.I.E.L.D. Of course, it is slightly exaggerated. After all, it is said to deal with the whole world, but there are still a few countries that it cannot penetrate. After all, even if the Mausi in the East is so corrupt, if it dares to do something, the other party will dare to send troops directly. Tony is well aware of this, but he also knows that the power and status of the S.H.I.E.L.D. agency must be very high. This world has changed Tony. It has begun to get out of control. Aliens, demons, gods, and other powerful existences have appeared one after another. It is proved that this era has entered a rampage. No one knows what will happen to the Earth in the future. We need the power to protect the world. The power to protect the world? That's right. Fury took out a document from the side and dropped it on the glass table in front of Tony. The latter glanced at Fury, picked up the document casually, opened it, and flipped through it. When he saw the contents inside, his eyes moved involuntarily. I didn't expect that the White House and Congress would actually pass this bill. When did they become good people? Tony's tone was full of sarcasm. The essence of the United States is capital, and capital is power. And what this social structure presents is that interests come first. A group of people in power would actually pay a huge price to form a powerful team for the sake of the safety of the world, and this team was not controlled by them. In the past, it must have been nonsense. Fury pretended not to hear Tony's blunt sarcasm about those in power, and he thought so, too. Okay, I have to say that your eloquence is very good. I am very interested in this Avengers plan, but why should I build this team under your leadership? I think I can do it myself. Tony waved the document waved. Forming a team with super combat effectiveness, Tony hadn't thought of it before, but this plan does have merit in Tony's heart. But he couldn't believe the so-called S.H.I.E.L.D. This matter is beyond your control, Tony. Fury said bluntly, you can form this team, but you will be targeted by the government and even all parties. They will wait for you to complete this team, and then mercilessly steal your achievements. Even if the Stark Group has influence and connections, your connections will betray you. Smiley face. The interests involved in this matter are too great, and it can only be endorsed by S.H.I.E.L.D. The reason is very simple. Now in this world, the high-level forces of various countries have gradually realized that although the world is still dominated by technology, it is already shifting towards the direction of evolution. If the appearance of the God's Mansion is an introduction, then California is the source of the ignition. That shocking battle was several kilometers apart, and the aftermath almost destroyed a city. This kind of power is far inferior to technological weapons. Evolution has become a trend. S.H.I.E.L.D. has recently received a lot of information. In the past 6 months, the number of homeless people has dropped at an alarming rate, and information on cases of accidental death and disease death has gradually increased. Why is that? Isn't it because of the need for a large number of test items? Tony forming this kind of team alone is a huge piece of fat, and it attracts greedy eyes from all sides, and even a behemoth like the Stark Group can't resist it. The Xavier Academy for Teenage Mutants is the biggest example of this. If it hadn't been for the last-minute return of the suspected Omega-level Phoenix girl, who displayed undeniable strength, the mutant kid in the academy would have already been dismembered on a test bench somewhere. Tony was silent, and as Fury said, he did understand. I have observed what you are doing, Tony. I believe you will make a choice. Human beings need their own guardians. I believe you are not willing to see those damned greedy things that come out of nowhere and want to destroy the earth as a back garden. But we can only do nothing. History has told us what will happen without strength. Tony's eyes moved, and after a few seconds of silence, he said, "Who else is there besides me? I don't want a clown to enter my team." These words have already proved that Tony agreed to the plan. But Fury shook his head directly. "Your team? You are just one of the members, Tony. You will not be the leader of this team. I don't need a team of Avengers who's throwing a pool party before going on a mission." Tony was very angry when he heard this. "Water? Do you think there is anyone more suitable to lead the team than me? There is also a pool party, which is also relaxing. Do we have to maintain a tense state all the time? That's the biggest harm to the team. Believe me, no one can adjust emotions better than me." Tony started talking nonsense, but Fury was unmoved. "Don't talk about Tony. In my personnel analysis report, you are the most unstable point. No one knows when you will go crazy. If it weren't for your recent change, you wouldn't be an Avenger at all." "What, Fark? Do you think I really care about being an Avenger?" Tony was really angry now. Didn't he come to invite him? Not to mention how much sincerity there is, but not only did he not say good things, but he also slammed his face to face. How could Tony, who is proud of his personality, bear it? He immediately expressed that I was unwilling. However, Fury ignored this kind of rebellious psychology. In his eyes, Tony is a kid mentality who hasn't grown up. He changed the subject and said another thing. "Your armor is a good thing, no accident. Someone will ask you to hand it over soon, and for good reason." "Hey, what are you kidding? The MK armor is mine, and no one can take it away from me," Tony said disdainfully. Fury shook his head. "You have to give some sweetness, Tony. I know you should have a good friend in the military who will become a member of the Avengers." Fury didn't directly name him, but Tony already understood, frowning and thinking. "Fact, those greedy guys." Tony cursed secretly, but he still compromised. But Tony is very confident. So what if he handed over the MK armor? Condensing the fruit of his wisdom, he believes that it is impossible for those guys to copy it. Thank you, guys. Chapter 79. Tony and the Avengers. I've already found 4 teammates for you, and you need to recruit the rest yourself. Tony, Walter. Tony froze. Fury saw Tony's thoughts and said with a slightly ironic tone, "It's what you think, Tony. 2 of them are ace agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and their role is to monitor you in addition to bonding your teams. You don't really think S.H.I.E.L.D. spends so much effort and does nothing?" Tony opened his mouth. He really wanted to smash the annoying bald guy in front of him with the pulse cannon. Turning his eyes slightly, he didn't object, but sarcastically said, "What ace agent? You said that the Avengers are the power to protect the Earth. Are they qualified? Believe me, even if you put on that iron shell, it doesn't take much effort for my agents to kill you." Fury frowned. "Heh," Tony sneered. "I have already decided in my heart that I will teach these 2 so-called ace agents a lesson, and then take a video and send it to this bastard. He will take pictures of this guy's expression throughout the process. I believe it will be a very interesting picture." "Okay, Tony, your next future teammate may not have a good temper, so restrain your mouth that wants to be torn apart." After Fury finished speaking, he stood up, turned, and left the villa. Ignoring Fury's disappearance, Tony sat on the sofa and took a sip from his wine glass, opening the last page of the document with the other hand. Above is a middle-aged man with slightly curly hair and vicissitudes. Bruce Banner. 2 in the Pacific Ocean. Outside the sanctuary, because of the enchantment, hundreds of thousands of kilometers are covered with an ocean, and no one will see that there is a miraculous sanctuary standing here. Even ships or cruise ships that occasionally pass by nearby 727 will not suddenly have the idea of inexplicably changing their routes due to the influence of the enchantment. But today, 2 uninvited guests came to the sanctuary. At this time in the sanctuary, in the huge duel arena, Bart was fighting fiercely with Thor, and the 2 figures collided at a speed invisible to the naked eye. Rumble, a terrifying roar suddenly appeared, and the majestic force punched the hammer in Soul's hand. Seeing that Thor's middle door was wide open, Bart's eyes flashed sharply, and he pushed his knee upwards hard. However, what Bart did not expect was that Soul actually grinned. With his right hand in front of his chest, his left hand precisely grasped Bart's shoulder and let his knee hit the palm of his hand. The huge impact drove his figure backwards, while his left hand grabbed Bart's shoulder and pulled his stagger together. However, Thor's hammer, which was originally blown away, flew back automatically, and the flight trajectory seemed to be Bart's head. This coherence lasted almost 1 second, and the cone-shaped mist and sonic boom bursting out from around Thor's hammer were enough to prove that the speed had reached the Mach level at this time. Coupled with its hard characteristics, this blow was surprisingly powerful. Even if someone with a physique as strong as a saint fighter is hit, he will be fainted for a while. In a battle of this level, a single flaw could mean the difference between victory, not to mention loss of consciousness. At the moment when Thor's hammer flashed lightning and was about to hit Bart's head, Bart's green pupils flashed, and incomparable power burst out from his body. The terrifying air wave forcibly shook Sol before he even had time to raise his head. He stretched out his palm and directly grabbed the Thor's hammer that had already struck. Boom! Huge waves of air rushed in all directions like a frenzy, and Bart couldn't help sliding on the ground for more than 10 meters under the huge impact. Finally, Bart let out a low cry and stomped his right foot on the ground hard, shattering, beefa, a piece, and forcibly pressing stopping Thor's hammer. The taxiing stopped abruptly. Seeing the flashes of lightning and vibrations in his palms, trying to break free from his Thor's hammer, Bart laughed and let go. Let Thor's hammer fly to Thor. The latter picked it up casually, held it in the palm of his hand, and showed a heroic smile. The two tacitly knew that this exchange of discussions was over. Outside the duel arena, Loki and several saints watching the battle also walked over when they saw that the sparring was over. Bart patted a trace of dust on his clothes and said with a smile, "I never thought that you would make such great progress after a few months. It's really surprising, Sol." This is not flattery, as Bart's personality would do. Bart was really surprised by what Sol showed this time. First of all, Thor's physical fitness and divine power have been greatly enhanced, and his combat awareness has also been greatly improved. The strength is at least half stronger than the duel 3 months ago. Most importantly, his original messy and reckless fighting style has been greatly optimized. Thor was stronger before, and facing opponents of the same level, combined with the possible explosion at the last minute, he might basically be able to win. However, in the face of a fighter who is flawless in all aspects like the Saint Seiya, the difference is not even a single star. The biggest aspect is Sol's rough fighting style. For thousands of years, he has tried his best to fight and fight countless times, although Thor has grown into Thor. The enemies that can be faced are not climate change at all. You just need to use your strength to crush it. If you can't beat it, you can temporarily explode the seeds to make your strength stronger. So Sol has developed a very rough fighting style, which works well against ordinary enemies, but against an opponent like Bart who has a perverted control of the details of the battle, it is no different from delivering food. Just like the same level of physical fitness, the difference between a person who has practiced mixed martial arts and a person who knows nothing is as big. Sol recalled all the details of that battle, and immediately discovered this, and began to pay attention to controlling the details. Sol himself is amazingly talented, and he has grown very rapidly in the past 3 months, so he came to Sanctuary today to find Bart to compete. However, Sol grew up, and Bart's growth was even more terrifying. In 3 months, Bart's normal sixth sense has gone a long way. Bart and a group of saints, apart from meditation every day, are looking for the worst environment exercise, and often need to be instructed, beaten, by Pope Kal himself, how not to grow rapidly. So this time, Sol was crushed throughout the competition, but Sol was not discouraged. At least his progress was visible to the naked eye, which made Sol very excited. In these 3 months, progress has been faster than hundreds of years. Sure enough, as the father said, getting in touch with Bart and the others will make him better. In addition, there is another point that Thor didn't feel it, but Loki noticed that Thor's personality was undergoing subtle changes. He, who is usually only reckless, has begun to learn how to think. So much so that Odin discovered this and praised Sol, but the latter only felt that his strength was enhanced and was praised, completely unaware that Odin was praising his progress in character. Several people had a chat, and afterwards Sol also pulled Bart to review some of his shortcomings during the battle. Looking at it, Loki was quite envious. He also practiced as hard as Sol for 3 months, practicing his magic and fighting skills assiduously. However, his strength was insufficient, and he was not even qualified to compete with Bart and the others. While chatting, suddenly, Bart, Santos of Ursa Major, and Cain of Unicorn suddenly raised their heads and looked in the direction outside the sanctuary. The chat was interrupted, which surprised Sol and Loki, but when they saw the appearance of a few people, they immediately realized something. Bart, aha, the newcomer is here, Bart grinned. They exchanged glances with Santos and the others, and after greeting Sol, the The figure soared into the air and flew out of the sanctuary. Newcomer? Is the new saint warrior here? Loki narrowed his eyes slightly and chased after him with Sol. Everyone's flying speed is good. Even Loki has the magic of flying, but the flying speed is not as fast as Thor. The sanctuary covers a very large area, and it took a few minutes to fly at the speed of everyone before reaching the edge. The edge of the exit of the sanctuary is considered open air, and there is no city wall built, so like the beach of the island, the surrounding large and small islands and reefs form a beautiful bay similar to Crescent Bay. The fine white sand beach is accompanied by turquoise and clear sea water layer by layer. The clear water can even see the seaweed, scallops and crab microorganisms at the bottom of the water. Under this beautiful scenery, two figures stood on the beach and looked around. Beside him stood two large boxes. Lee, did you say it was here? It should be here. This is the place where you and my golden holy clothes gave us the information? In order to come here, I didn't tell my family and spent even the last pocket money on my body. I hired someone to come here. If it wasn't here, then the two of us would probably have to live here for the rest of our lives. The black-haired young man coldly spread his hands. But there seems to be nothing here. Another young man with brown hair stretched out his palm between his eyebrows, looked left and right. His handsome face was full of bitterness. Don't let him be fooled by the gold box. If he was deceived, the surrounding area would be hundreds of thousands of kilometers of ocean, and if he wanted to swim, he would have to swim back for a long time. Smiley face. Even after getting the golden box, his body would already have surpassed that of ordinary people after some training. The small universe has not yet awakened, and it is impossible to fly even if it wants to. Don't worry, John. The golden holy cloth will not deceive us. I seem to feel that someone is watching us. Li Chi comforted from the side. At this time, the faces of the two of them suddenly changed. The next second, the originally calm sky in the distance suddenly rippled, and several figures fell down like meteorites. The speed was so fast that the two of them didn't even have time to react. When they did, there were already a few more people in front of them, accompanied by a loud and heavy voice. Aha, a new partner is here. 2 gold? Hello, my name is Bart. Li Chi and John stared blankly at the couple in front of them. Personal. It was Bart, Santos, and several saints who came to investigate the situation. None of them wore holy clothes, but wore slightly fashionable t-shirts, showing their muscular bodies to the fullest. The first impression was that each of them was handsome in their own way, tall and strong and magnificent. The aura emanating from their bodies made the hairs on both of them stand on end. The madness in the senses issued an early warning. It can be seen that the strength of these people in front of them has far surpassed themselves. Fortunately, Bart and Santos were more enthusiastic, adding Bart's words, let them understand the identity of these people. In fact, Bart is also considered a celebrity. Bart became a saint in the Parthenon temple. Many people took pictures of him at the beginning, but he has changed too much from the current him. His body shape and face make him even the closest in the orphanage. Most people probably wouldn't recognize it. Chapter 80. New Gold. Hello, my name is Li Chi, and his name is John. Well, I should be Libra, and he is Sagittarius. Li Chi introduced himself generously, but when he talked about the constellations, he was a little hesitant. It looks interesting, but it seems that you haven't awakened the small universe yet. Bart stroked his chin and looked at the two with interest. While speaking, a thunderclap exploded in the sky at this moment, and Sol and Loki flew down from the amazed eyes of Li Chi and John. Seeing Thor's appearance, Li Chi, who had some knowledge of Nordic mythology, asked in surprise, Are you Thor? Do you know me? Sol wondered. Li Chi nodded. That's right, you are the son of Odin, the father of the gods in Norse mythology. As expected by others, the god in Norse mythology really exists. Since the appearance of Athena, a large number of people have speculated that the gods in a series of myths such as Norse mythology or demons and monsters should all exist, but they are not on the earth, but in other dimensions outside the earth, or in the world unknown. Li Chi became interested in this, so he paid more attention to Norse mythology and Greek mythology. Okay, Sol was quite happy that someone on earth knew him, and then he noticed the gold box next to the two of them, and then he reacted. You are gold saints? Hungry. It's just that you don't seem to be strong? Haven't awakened the small universe yet? Last time in Asgard, when Thor and Bart had a drink and chatted with a group of people, they had a little understanding of their origins and how they became saints in their power system. Hungry. It is true that we have not yet awakened the small universe, but we have completed the initial trials. and the holy clothes remind us that we need to come to the sanctuary for the next step of cultivation. John clicked on the gold box beside him. To be honest, no one would want to wear that cool golden holy cloth. It is noble and gorgeous, but he is not even qualified to open the box, let alone put on the golden holy cloth. This makes John quite a pity, but fortunately, it also makes him more motivated to awaken the small universe, and then put on the golden holy clothes to protect the goddess Athena. However, Jorn is not clear at all. To wear the holy clothes, the prerequisite is to achieve the seventh sense. Naturally, the saint cloth would not prompt this to a little guy who hadn't awakened the small universe. During the conversation, everyone introduced themselves to each other. But at this time, Bart was taken aback for a moment, as if he had received some order, and said to Li Qi and John, "Let's go. The Pope wants to see you. It should be related to your next step of cultivation." Pope? Li Qi and John were stunned for a moment, but then nodded quickly, carrying the golden boxes on their backs as if they were ready to go. But Bart smiled and said suddenly, "Are you ready?" Prepare? What to prepare? When the two were still wondering, they suddenly felt their bodies soaring into the air uncontrollably, and in the next second, they felt a huge impact coming in front of them. Boom! As the sound wave exploded, the two were dragged by Bart's powerful mental power and flew towards the sanctuary. In the sky, there were two screams. "Ah, it's too fast." The others looked at each other and followed with a smile. A few minutes later, in front of the Pope's palace, Bart took Li Qi and John up the long stairs. Beside them were the Saloki brothers and Santos who were watching the fun. It is solemn like a papal palace where a great man stands, and the sense of quaintness, oldness, and sanctity comes to the face, and even the two soul brothers have to admire it. As for Li Qi and John, they just stared blankly. There is no such building in modern times. It seems that it is not something that humans can build at all. The two followed Bart step by step in a daze. Bart seemed to think of something, as if he was reminding the two of them, and he seemed to be reminding the two Saul brothers. When you see the Pope, don't show any disrespect. Idea. There has to be enough respect. Your Pope is scary? Saul asked. Bart shook his head first and then nodded. I can tell you that Pope Kyle is the only surviving ancient gold saint who followed Athena in the battle of the ancient gods. Her strength is unfathomable. She can easily penetrate people's hearts and can easily modify time. As soon as these words came out, Li Qi and John were overwhelmed with excitement. The Battle of the Gods, the phantom scene shot at the Parthenon Temple, is still the most clicked video on the internet. Now, no matter who it is, if they click on that video and see the unyielding and brave demeanor of all the saints on the battlefield of the gods, they will feel the blood spurting and the blood boiling. Unexpectedly, someone from that generation of saints was still alive. It's just unbelievable. As for the two soul brothers, there was a huge wave in their hearts. The golden saints of ancient times? Participating in the existence of the battle of the gods? How strong does that have to be? Odin once said that this Athena may have existed longer than Asgard and the Odinson family. How many years does that take? Antique it is. They are older than Sol, and their grandfathers are not sure how old they are. And to participate in the battle of the gods, dare to fight against the gods in the heyday of Athena, this must be an absolutely powerful warrior, and he should be respected. Stepping into the Pope's palace, two gates with a height of tens of meters have already been opened. The bright light inside casts various colors on the majestic and crystal-clear ground in the hall that reflects the shadows of people. There are stone pillars standing around the stone pillars, and there are simple patterns and figures carved on the stone pillars. On the walls, long red cloth and murals are hung. In the innermost part, a person wearing a gorgeous black and gold papal costume stood quietly. Under the black hood, a strand of blonde hair fell across the shoulder blades. Her beautiful face was as cold as a snow mountain, and her bright eyes exuded a sense of majesty and vicissitudes. This is the Pope, the golden saint of ancient times. Sol Loki, Li Qi and John had a flash of thought. Walking in front of the Pope, Bart and the others did not hesitate kneeling down on one knee. He respectfully said, "My Lord Pope." Seeing this, Li Qi and John also knelt down on one knee. As for Sol and Loki, they clenched their fists with their right hands in front of their chests to show their respect. Thousands of words are done, and... Chapter 81. Thanos in fright. Kyle stretched out his hand gently. "Get up." Bart and the others stood up when they heard this, and Kyle looked at Sol and Loki casually and said softly, "Athena issued an oracle. You two will be able to come to the sanctuary unimpeded in the future. You have Athena on your body. Blessings. You are friends of sanctuary." "Thank you so much." Thor and Loki beat their chests again. looking serious. Kyle nodded slightly, then looked at Li Qi and Yan, especially when he saw the gold box they were carrying. His beautiful eyes seemed to flash a hint of exclamation, as if he was recalling the past. Libra and Sagittarius. Both are the two strongest golds ever. I hope you don't fall into the prestige of two constellations. We will reappear the golden glory. Li Qi and Yan immediately adjusted their attitudes, looked at the appearance of the two young men. Kyle nodded, and then said coldly, "But if you want to inherit the Golden Saint clothes, you are still far away, not enough. Your second trial and test is about to begin." Although the voice was soft, the indifference contained in it made people's hearts go cold. The two swallowed involuntarily, showing nervousness. This sense of oppression that even Bart feared made the two people who had not awakened the small universe naturally palpitate. Kyle ignored it, but turned to Bart. 2 days ago, a knight covered in hellfire appeared in Texas, USA, and some demons appeared. The 727 may have something to do with Mephisto. This matter is for you and Elvis to investigate. It must be investigated clearly. Mephisto? Hearing this word, it immediately attracted the attention of everyone present, especially the saints of Bart, whose expressions changed drastically, and then they were full of anger. Santos and Ursa Major took a step forward, bowing his head and making his own request. "My lord, please let me go too." He was one of the protagonists who participated in the demon war in the Gulf of California back then. Back then, Mephisto showed great power and washed them away in a joking way almost the whole time. For the few of them, they remembered it like a shame. This kind of stain must be erased by oneself. It was just Kyle who shook his head and vetoed. This time it's just an investigation, and to determine whether there is a direct connection with Mephisto. Don't worry, your urgent task now is to break through to the seventh sense as soon as possible. I already have a feeling that a new threat is approaching. A new threat? Listening to Kyle's words, although the Santos and the others were unwilling at first, they could not refuse the Pope's order. But when they heard the follow-up words, they immediately became vigilant. A huge darkness has begun to threaten the Earth. He comes from another dimension, and he is the overlord who dominates one dimension. He is full of ambitions, trying to swallow all the multiverses and become eternal. This time, he has set his sights on the Earth. Just because of the existence of Supreme Master Gu-E, it has not been successful. However, I found that the Supreme Mage Gu-E is a little strange. She has dark power in her body. Dark power? As soon as these words came out, everyone immediately looked dignified. An existence comparable to Odin, the king of Asgard's gods, and a supreme mage who has guarded the earth for thousands of years, actually has dark power on his body. What does this mean? My Lord Pope, you mean that the supreme sorcerer, Gu-E, might be absorbing the power of darkness? Or has she already surrendered to the overlord of that dimension? Bart frowned. The earth is his home. With his most important family members, it is his duty to protect the earth, and he will never allow any danger here. Facing other people's eyes, Kyle shook his head. It's not about taking refuge, but although Ancient One is a supreme mage and the guardian of the earth, she still can't resist the erosion of time after all. Her fragile body has already made her life is coming to an end. She is absorbing the darkness, trying to prolong her life in this way. Everyone fell into silence. What should they say? The supreme mage guarded the earth for thousands of years against powerful evils, but in the end he couldn't escape the shackles of life. No matter what, your main goal now is to break through to the seventh sense as soon as possible. In the future, such crises will follow one after another. Yes, His Excellency the Pope. Kyle nodded and waved for Bart and the others to retreat, leaving John and Li Qi alone. You guys, the trial lasts for 1 year. After 1 year, I hope to see your growth. Wong. As soon as the words fell, along with a beam of light soaring into the sky, Li Qi and Yan disappeared into the beam of light. But Li Qi and Yon just felt that they were traveling through the unknown space at a wonderful speed. Beyond the light beam, the two of them could see the vast starry universe. And for how long it had passed, an incomparable light burst out in front of their eyes, making them unable to bear to close their eyes. When that wonderful state disappeared, a heavy pressure pressed heavily on their bodies, as if they were pressing down on a mountain. Li Qi finally couldn't help but opened his eyes. Smiley face. When he saw the picture in front of him, his pupils shrank suddenly. He actually appeared in an unknown world. In front of him was a very primitive ancient jungle. He was now on a cliff, overlooking the endless forest. The trees seemed to be hundreds of meters high at every moment. Not only that, but he also noticed that the gravity here is very different from that of the Earth. The gravity here is at least 10 times that of the Earth. If his body had not surpassed the limits of ordinary people, such gravity would be enough to crush him into minced meat. Besides that, John was gone. A terrifying roar came faintly from a distance, startling countless birds with strange shapes densely packed in the forest. The same is true for John, but compared to Li Qi, the environment of his planet is so harsh. This is a planet covered with ice and snow. The harsh temperature and constant wind and snow cover the surface with a thick layer. Heavy snow. The same gravity is 10 times that of the Earth, and there is endless snow in the distance, and there are various dangerous atmospheres coming from the distance. Is this our trial site? At the same time, in a vast starry universe, a huge space fleet is sailing. Outside the background, you can see a blue planet that seems to have just experienced a war. And you can also see the surface of the planet because the artillery fire blasted out huge pits one after another. Right at the forefront of the fleet, in the huge mothership that exudes a ferocious and cold luster, the tone is dim. In front of the huge floor-to-ceiling windows, a burly figure over 2 meters tall in golden armor stared at the starry sky outside the glass window with his hands behind his back. Just being silent already exudes a domineering and majestic enough to make people fear. Not far away, several figures with gray skin stood respectfully and still. Tread, tread, tread. At this time, footsteps were heard not far away, and as the dark black metal door opened automatically, a woman with green skin and a blue skin walked in. The skin could not conceal the beauty of the two, and their temperament was indifferent and capable. A taller green-skinned woman, wearing a short combat uniform, saw the figure in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows. Just as she was about to walk over, she saw a tall, gray-skinned man not far away shaking his head slightly at her with his fingers up, signaled not to disturb in the past. The woman frowned and walked over. "Father, is he still like this?" "Yes, it has been going on for a whole day." The woman listened to the words and looked at the figure with puzzled eyes. She had followed this man since she was a child, and she knew very well how powerful this man was. Even though she was full of hatred for him, she could not deny it. He, but the most powerful existence in the universe, is called Thanos, the tyrant. But such an existence actually shows such a side? While the two women were waiting with doubts in their stomachs, I don't know how long it had passed, and finally Thanos spoke, still maintaining that posture, without looking back. "My daughter, you are doing a great job." "It's my pleasure, father." The two women immediately said respectfully. "Our great ideals are already on the right path." Thanos turned around slowly and walked towards the daughter he considered the most outstanding with heavy steps. Those domineering eyes looked down at his daughter Gamora, and the latter showed no fear, did not avoid his sight, but looked directly at his father. Another woman on the side was full of dissatisfaction and jealousy. After looking at each other for a few seconds, Thanos spoke again. "However, there are new changes in our future plans." Thanos stretched out his hand and patted Gamora's shoulder, walked towards his own throne, sat down slowly, resting his hands on the armrests. His calm and prestige face remained unchanged. "Great Master, what are you worthy of change?" At this time, Ebony Throat, one of the 5 generals of Obsidian and Thanos' military, stepped forward. He has followed Thanos for so many years, and he has never seen Thanos say such a thing. This made him involuntarily stir up some waves. "I feel a powerful force that is rising at an unimaginable speed. Such a force is threatening us." Thanos tapped his finger on the armrest. His eyes flashed sharp and puzzled. Obviously, Thanos was quite puzzled by what he saw. Although Thanos is only a normal sub-heavenly father-level powerhouse, he has all the superhuman godlike philosophies of the Eternal Titans, and can do certain things that can only be done by a celestial father, such as seeing some pictures of the future. For a long time, he has formulated a series of plans for his own ideas, and the original Plan 5.0 has been advancing in the direction of the road he envisioned. However, not long ago, he saw the future was blurred, and pictures he had never seen before flashed in his mind. In that picture, the warriors wearing gorgeous and noble armors stood in the starry sky, and behind them was a huge, sacred, and majestic city. Above the city, there is a beautiful figure wrapped in light gauze, wearing a crown of golden flowers and laurels, and holding a golden scepter. Not only did he see the unprecedented terrifying power contained in those warriors, he also saw the feet of that sacred and majestic figure, and saw his own corpse, with unwillingness and despair in his eyes. This made Thanos terrified. He didn't understand. How could someone like him die? And it will die on a group of people who have never seen it before. Who are those warriors in gorgeous armor? Where is that sacred city? Who is that beautiful figure? This was something he had never seen before in his knowledge. When he wanted to delve deeper into the mysterious mansion holding the golden scepter, a majestic force appeared out of thin air and penetrated his defenses, causing him to be seriously injured on the spot, so that he has not recovered yet. Chapter 82. Thanos and Death. He is from the Eternal Titan family. His physical strength can even withstand the Star Destroyer cannon, but the sudden golden arrow ignored his indestructible defense and shot himself through, and the sacred energy is still burning his soul. How incredible this is. Don't look at him now that he looks fine on the surface, but in fact, he is in pain all the time. If he hadn't been able to feel the terrifying strength gradually weakening, he would have gone directly to the medical cabin for treatment. How could he still be sitting here pretending to be inscrutable? But it is undeniable that Thanos was afraid of the mysterious and sudden existence. How powerful is it to detect his detection and launch an attack across an unknown number of galaxies? Of course, Ebony Throat and others didn't know about this at all. Hearing Thanos' words, Ebony Throat just thought that the Master had noticed the rise of new power, and as a military advisor, he naturally wanted to solve the Master's problems, and immediately said, "Master, do you need me to investigate?" "No. The other party is very mysterious and powerful. I want to go in person." Thanos waved his hand and said in a low voice. The tone paused for a while and then continued. "You continue to proceed according to the plan. It seems that I need to visit someone." After speaking, the right index finger tapped lightly on the armrest. Wong. With ripples in the surrounding space, he sat down on the throne and disappeared in place immediately. It left Ebony Throat and the others with serious faces. It seems that the opponent is very unusual for the Master to attach so much importance. Ebony Maw lowered his head and thought, and Gamera's face was cold, as if it was the same as before, but a ray of light flashed in his eyes. He is afraid. Who is it that makes him afraid? Gamora is very certain that although Thanos concealed it very well, she can also feel a different aura from Thanos than before, and seems to be weaker than before. Is there really a stronger existence than Thanos? Maybe. Gamora's mind turned, and she secretly decided to investigate this matter. If there is such a person, she may be able to get out of the current situation. Noel is the most well-known place in the universe. It is also called the Land of Nothingness, and it is also a very special place. The planet that exists here is not naturally generated, but is built by a huge skull comparable to the size of a planet, suspended in the universe, surrounded by green and yellow intertwined cloud clusters. The center of this planet from a distance, one can feel the aura of antiquity and vastness rushing towards one's face. Gives a feeling of palpitation and shock. This is the realm of nothingness, and this skull is the oldest biological head in the universe. Here, there are no rules and laws at all. This is one of the most famous criminal realms in the universe, full of violence and crime. It is also a real jungle of the jungle. Here, every day people will die. Every day they will fight because of quarrels. Every day they will lose all their money because of gambling here. They will be mercilessly killed or defeated to become a slave trader. There are high-tech buildings everywhere, and creatures from all corners of the universe are densely packed, coming and going, presenting a lively scene. And just above the Skull Planet, on the top floor of one of the tallest and quaint buildings, an old man with neatly trimmed white hair and a black square pattern on his chin was looking at his collection one by one in a flamboyant pink coat. Inside this collection hall are his collections that have been collected for tens of millions of years. There are all kinds of strange things. Some are the most rare and expensive treasures in the universe, and some are the most special and strange creatures in the universe. Anyway, they are enough to dazzle people. He is a collector, one of the oldest people with the longest life. Wearing sunglasses and happily brushing through glass collection boxes, there are women with pink skin and special abilities of a certain race, and there is also a squatting spacesuit. Great Golden Retriever. And at this moment, a thick and deep voice suddenly came from the originally quiet collection hall. Your tastes never seem to change, collector. Of course, in my long life, I have seen through everything. Only the things that I have never seen before are the most worth collecting, aren't they? The collector seemed not surprised by the sudden appearance. The bent body stood up straight and turned to look at the shadowy place in the corner behind him. There, a huge and burly figure loomed. He stepped out, purple-skinned, with a huge vertical-line chin, wearing blue and gold armor, gold booties, and a blue and gold helmet with a jewel on his forehead. It is Thanos who is the tyrant. Huh. Very strange energy. The moment he saw Thanos, the collector's old face changed suddenly, His eyes flashed with surprise, and he immediately walked in front of Thanos impatiently, circling Thanos sized it up. Finally, a conclusion is given. The power that has never been seen before is full of divinity, so it must be a very powerful god. When did you provoke such an opponent? It's not like this in your character. The collector was surprised. He knew the character of Thanos. Although he was one of the most powerful overlords in the universe, he had a deep and cunning personality and would never provoke being stronger than himself. For example, with his so-called balance theory of the universe, he intends to wipe out half of the life in the universe. Countless races have been massacred, but all that are wiped out are civilizations that are sufficiently backward. Without a civilization supported by the strong, he would never provoke the universe's first class, or even the top forces, or even the planets he colonized. Not to mention this kind of old antique that even he has lived for billions of years, he thinks it is a terrifying, powerful existence. Is that something Thanos would mess with? It's simply not possible. Surprised by the collector, Thanos didn't change his face and let him touch his body left and right. This is why I came to you, Tawan. I'm sorry, I guess I'm going to disappoint you. I don't understand such a divine residence. Tawan shook his head. Thanos couldn't help frowning when he heard this. Among all the people he knew, Tawan lived the longest, and he knew very clearly many secret things in the universe. You don't know the nature of this power? I haven't seen it, but I can be sure that this may be stronger than the one in Asgard. Excuse me. Seeing that there was no gain, Thanos didn't stay too much, turned and left. Watching Thanos disappear into the shadows, Tawan's originally surprised expression immediately became calm. There was a flash of thought in his eyes. Who could she be who can make Thanos suffer heavy injuries? It's really strange. Is it a new powerful race? But it's not right. The terrible will and divinity contained in that power are not at all. It is not something that new races can have. After thinking for a long time, he curled his lips, too lazy to pursue it. Forget it. It's also a good thing for me. Thanos is frustrated, which is something he likes to see. He himself is one of the elders of the universe, because his life is too long. In order not to get bored, he cultivated an extremely obsessed collection hobby, but he foresaw a future that is strong enough to threatening the existence of the elders of the universe. It will be Thanos. For this reason, he specially created a museum that can accommodate all species in the universe, just to prevent Thanos from being destroyed along with his own collection. Smiley face. Now that Thanos has obviously met a strong opponent, he is so happy. Not to mention that he didn't know the origin and identity of the mysterious mansion. Even if he knew, he wouldn't tell Thanos. Another happy day. D1 Maisie muttered an unknown tune, put on his sunglasses, and left the museum. He had to have a good drink to celebrate. At the same time, in the cosmic starry sky, Thanos shuttled at high speed on his floating throne. He closed his eyes, and the picture in his mind was completely lingering, as if it had penetrated deeply into his soul and mind. Puff! Suddenly, his chest heaved rapidly. Thanos opened his eyes suddenly, spouted a mouthful of blood, raised his hand to wipe the corner of his mouth, looked at the blood stained on his fingers, squinted his eyes, and said in a low voice, "What are you doing? Who is it? You are really interested in me." Under the indifferent face, the tone seemed a little ferocious. He hated the feeling of losing his control, and that sudden existence had undoubtedly become the biggest obstacle to his plan. Not only that, he didn't even know the identity of the other party. "I will definitely find you." He slowly closed his eyes, seeing the beautiful figure in his mind that was full of beauty, but only with a blurred face. Thanos murmured to himself. 727. And Kyle, who was missed by Thanos, slowly opened his beautiful eyes. At this time, she was floating in the midair of the goddess temple, and the surrounding space exuded a suffocating divine rhythm, and the strands of golden airflow transformed into illusions, and a phantom of the Milky Way stars could be seen in a trance. The sacred majesty is inviolable. A golden halo flashed across her beautiful eyes, and she raised her head slightly, as if through the ceiling of the goddess temple. She saw a burly figure traveling through the universe countless light years away. Thanos. In this state, she closed all her senses, basically just immersed in that mysterious world, so she could not perceive any external disturbances. But unexpectedly, in this situation, she still felt that she was being spied on. The mighty will of the Lord God automatically triggered a counterattack, wounding the malicious voyeur. If it wasn't for the lack of strength and the distance too far, otherwise, the would have fallen directly. Although she didn't let the other party die, It also allowed her to obtain the identity information of the spy. Thanos, the tyrant, is also the protagonist who will trigger one of the major events in the Marvel Universe in the future. In fact, to a certain extent, Thanos' idea is not wrong. The growth of space resources cannot match the increase of population at all. One day in the future, when the population explosion continues to a certain point, the universe will also usher in destruction. However, Kyle is very clear that this is not Thanos' real intention. The overexpansion of population resources is not without a solution. The existence of the celestial group, Galactus, etc., is to solve this problem. Thanos, as a person who knows all the ideas of the eternal race, cannot be ignorant. Then he will continue to use this idea as an excuse to slaughter half of the population of the universe, just for another reason. Death is one of the 5 creator gods of the Marvel Universe. She is the embodiment of all life-terminating concrete forms in the universe. She is a cosmic entity that embodies the concept of death, as opposed to an eternal companion. Once, Thanos saw death, fell in love with death, and started slaughtering in order to please death. /*/ dash asterisk slash asterisk slash asterisk slash asterisk slash asterisk slash. Chapter 83. Jane Foster and Daisy. This is Thanos' main purpose of killing half of the universe's population. The main reason for Kyle to be sure of this is that she felt the aura that only the main can have from Thanos. It shows that Thanos has been being watched by death all the time. Interesting, therefore, being able to lick a dog like Thanos is considered a talent. However, in order to please death and slaughter half of the life in the universe, Kyle is deeply disgusted. She knows that when the strength reaches a certain level, the character in the bottom of her heart, there will be different changes. All life is as insignificant as ants in the eyes of such a strong person. Just like human beings, even caring people, when they trample an ant to death, will they feel guilty? Even if guilt arises, how long can it last? Humans are still like this, let alone those gods. The same is true for Kyle. In her previous life, let alone killing people, she dared not even kill a live chicken. But now, she can erase a person's life at will without any emotional change. She never thinks how kind she is, and it can even be said that she is a seeker of interests. It's just that what she pursues is the supreme power. For this reason, she will show herself in front of billions of people on the earth in the darkest state, and even perform, just to harvest faith and so on, so as to make herself stronger. But at least, she still has her own bottom line. For those who are kind, she will respect their lives. While pursuing strength, she will not be stingy with her kindness. Thanos is different, he pleases death, and has the lives of innocent people in his hands. She doesn't mind letting him be wiped out in the slightest. As for death, but this one will not make a move at all, even if Thanos died. Thanos had already sentenced her to death in her heart, but she didn't act immediately, not to mention the distance, just a mere sub-celestial parent, she didn't take it seriously at all. At that time, just wait for any gold to kill him. Then Kyle closed his eyes again. At this time, she has stepped into the 8th feel, rumble. The golden ripples turned into circles of golden light and fluctuated in the temple of the goddess. In Texas, on the number 38 Badlands Highway, the dark sky was filled with terrifying and gloomy dark clouds. Thunder flickered and raged in the sky, and the torrential rain was pouring down, making it impossible for people to see clearly at night. Rumble, accompanied by an electric light explosion. On the wasteland on the left side of the road, streaks of sparks full of sulfur smell kept falling. At this time, a person wearing a black windbreaker appeared among the sparks all over the sky, and in the afterglow of the electric light, he could see a terrifying and ferocious face flashing past his pale and handsome face. Letting the heavy raindrops fall on his face, the drops of water slid down his cheeks and down his chin. Gently raised his head to look at the shining city at the end of the road, showing an evil smile. It's really a pleasant atmosphere. Why didn't I feel the breath of danger? Are they all hidden? While muttering to himself, a thoughtful look flashed in his eyes. This time he came to the world just to find that special contract, but at the same time, he was also full of caution. The scene of the terrifying man holding a golden scepter breaking into a loan and fighting his father Mephisto is still lingering. Although he is full of ambitions for the throne, he will not deny the power of Mephisto. And after that, his father came to the earth once, and it seemed that he had experienced a great war. No matter who it was, there must be someone in the world that he couldn't afford. Care must be taken. His figure slowly turned into a black streak and disappeared in place. Just after he disappeared, half disappeared. In the sky, a figure pierced through the thick and rolling dark clouds, broke through the rain curtain like a meteorite and fell on the road. Boom! When the fall was still about 10 meters away from the ground, the silhouette produced a huge contrast from the movement to the stillness. This contrast burst out a terrible air wave, and even the rain curtain was blown to pieces and even rolled up into the sky. The rain curtain paused for a moment and finally fell towards the ground. And this figure is slowly floating down. Rumble, the lightning flashed, and along with the lightning, a very burly figure was revealed, wearing a red jacket, brown sweatpants, and white sail shoes. He squatted slightly, his face exposed in the halo. There is also a necklace on it, and the gold necklace hanging on Bo's neck can be clearly seen. He was ordered by Pope Kyle to find clues. Squat down on one knee, grab the completely charred and wet weeds with your big hands, and grind the weeds into black ash with light force. Bart felt the very unusual aura, and his eyes flashed sharply. A strange demon, but with the aura of Mephisto. Is it the son of Mephisto or his subordinate? Dirty things dare to come to earth. After standing up, he dodged his feet casually, and with a bang, golden ripples swept across the ground in an instant, and the corrosive demonic aura left on the ground was directly annihilated. Just when he was about to continue chasing the demon, two high-beam headlights came directly on the road not far away, and a suspicious female voice came from beside his ear. "Hey, big guy, what are you doing here?" Bart turned his head to look, and saw a wide RV slowly stop. The window on the driver's seat was opened, revealing a female face with blonde hair and beautiful growth. On the other side of the co-pilot, a black-haired woman stretched out. He turned his head and looked over, and when he saw Bart's burly figure and his tight abdominal muscles that were stretched out in a white shirt, he couldn't help but let out a wow. What a handsome big guy. The blonde woman in the driver's seat rolled her eyes, apparently a little helpless towards her bestie, looked at Bart and asked, "What are you doing here? Come here to experience the romance of Route 38? The last sentence is obviously a joke, and it also shows the woman's cheerful and humorous personality. Bart raised his eyebrows and found an excuse at random. "I was thrown here by a friend's prank." Playing pranks in the rainstorm? This place is dozens of kilometers away from the city. The woman looked like your friend was an asshole, then hesitated for a moment, looked at Bart carefully, and saw that Bart didn't seem to be a bad guy, and then decided to reach out. "We're going downtown and we can take you one." "Actually, it's not necessary. I usually exercise, so it's not a big deal." Bart knew the deterrent power of his body, so he politely declined. For dozens of kilometers, if he flies, it will only take a few minutes. Bart's refusal, on the contrary, reassured the two women a lot. After all, if it was a bad guy, they would wish to get in the car right away. The black-haired woman said enthusiastically, "Come on, handsome guy. You will feel better after being drenched in the heavy rain all night." "You're welcome. It's on the way anyway." The blonde woman shrugged. Regarding the enthusiasm of the two women, Bart thought for a while, then nodded. Okay. So he walked to the front door of the RV. After opening the door, he walked in. It is worth mentioning that the moment he got into the RV, he could clearly feel the car pressing down a bit. Fortunately, Bart realized this, and immediately used his control of force to change his weight to be similar to that of ordinary people. After all, in terms of his body strength, his body density structure is quite astonishing, no less than any heavy object, and it is undoubtedly a huge burden for the RV. After getting into the RV, under the enthusiastic guidance of the brunette woman, he took off his shoes, put on clean slippers, and took off his coat. Taking off Bart's coat, the tight perfect body in the white shirt is completely revealed. The perfect muscle shape and slightly bronzed skin reveal an attractive color, which is almost poison for muscle lovers. The brunette who looked was almost drooling. Fortunately, the space of the RV is considered spacious. Even if Bart is a little over 1.9 meters tall, he doesn't have to bow his head. This is one of the advantages of an American RV. "Hey, my name is Daisy. My name is Jane. My name is Bart." The three of them got to know each other, and Bart also knew that the astronomer who was driving Jane came to Texas with her assistant Daisy and her best friend to detect a rare astronomical phenomenon that appeared a week ago. "Today I happened to be ready to go back after the test, but I ran into Bart." But Bart made up an identity at random, saying that he was playing with friends, but on the way back, he was thrown down because of a friend's prank. This also made the two women say that Bart's fictional friends are jerks. Let Bart laugh dryly, not talking. On the way back, the three of them communicated quite happily. Although Bart is in a young age, his mind has experienced the trials of this spiritual world, and he is already approaching maturity. It won the favor of the two women. The three even added contact information and social media accounts to each other. Jane and Daisy were also very happy to meet a friend on the way home, and he was a friend who seemed very secure. Although this friend is only 18 years old. There was no disturbance on the way back, so I just filled up the gas once, and when I got back to the urban area, it was almost 11 o'clock in the evening. When I arrived in the urban area, Bart got out of the car. At this time, there are not too many vehicles and pedestrians on the urban roads. Zhao Li Zhao, after driving all night, Jane and Daisy were both a little tired and planned to rest here for the night. Smiley face. Before getting off the car, Bart specifically said that he would treat the two girls to a good meal at noon the next day in order to thank them. Having become friends, Jane and Daisy were not polite, but responded. Standing on the side of the road, watching the two women drive their RV to a park where RVs can be parked, Bart is very happy because he has met two new friends. When although he is very young, he doesn't think of things like love. Purely in terms of friendship, on the contrary, Daisy, a muscle lover, seems to have some thoughts about Bart, but when she knows that he is only 18, she immediately discards that thought. After the RV turned left at the intersection ahead and disappeared, Elvis's voice came from Bart's ear. Wow, you seem to have met two beautiful girls. Bart turned around and saw Elvis's handsome face with a mocking face, scratched his head and said, I met them on the road. They are indeed beautiful and have a good personality. Well, I forgive you for making me wait here for a few hours. Have you gained anything there? Bart ignored his partner's teasing, but asked seriously. When it came to business, Elvis also became serious. I found some aura related to demons here, but this aura is a bit strange. I also found it on Route 38. There should be a demon smuggling in. Chapter 84. The stowaway devil, is it related to that guy? Elvis's face darkened. During the battle in the Gulf of California, Mephisto's playful and disdainful appearance was always in his mind. That would be a great shame to all the saints who participated in the war. With this goal in mind, a group of people practiced frantically in the sanctuary. With the help of Pope Kyle, they went to the outer universe to find the planet with the worst environment to practice. Isn't it just to find Murphy's stow one day and wash away their shame? Bart nodded. That's right. I sensed his breath. I don't know if it's his descendants or his subordinates. The probability of the former is not small. It's really good enough. Knowing that we are here, you dare to let your children come to Earth. Elvis sneered. No matter who it is, as long as it is a demon, he will destroy it, let alone have a relationship with that guy. He had to bring it to ashes. That guy is hiding very well. I used my mental perception to track him along the way, but I didn't find him. But he should be in this city. A guy from suddenly came here, why? Elvis looked contemplative, thinking constantly turning. Is it to find a soul, object, or something else? There are no more than two ways for demons to come to the earth. One is to possess a certain sacrifice through a special ritual call, and the other is to fuse the two concepts. Both of them break the dimensional boundary directly from and come to the earth. However, this one only very powerful demons can do it. Also, if the strength is not strong enough to forcibly tear open the dimensional barriers directly, they can only smuggle through special methods. Obviously, that mysterious demon came to Earth by smuggling. If it is the former, it must be very powerful, not to mention that they will notice it. If not, the Pope will have to kill him. Don't guess. Just find him and ask him face to face. Bart grinned, but the smile seemed a little cruel. The way to ask is definitely not that simple. Elvis nodded. That's true. Once he makes any movement, he will definitely not be able to escape our detection. Let's go and eat something first. The two came to the city and found a supper restaurant to eat something, then found another hotel to stay. The two of them don't care about Chin at all. After all, Elvis was not idle during the waiting time. When he was looking for the trace of the devil, he just happened to meet the local gangster, and the enthusiastic gang leader selflessly dedicated the two of them activity funds. Not much, but $1 million. So much so that Elvis had to sigh with emotion how rich these gangsters were. In order to express his gratitude, he also specially read the memory of the gang boss, and the other party did a lot of unreasonable things. So he gave the gang boss and his subordinates a one-way travel ticket to hell. I believe they will be very happy gratitude. On the wide balcony of the luxury hotel, his broad buttocks fill up the sofa. He cuts the beef and lamb chops on the dining table with a knife and fork, and overlooks the city streets below while eating. Even the dark night couldn't stop his piercing eyes. When he finished eating the beef and mutton chops on the dinner plate, he leaned on the back of the sofa, looked up at the kind stars in the sky, and his bad mood became peaceful again. After awakening the small universe, He spent the cruelest 10 years in the spiritual world and then experienced battles. While training his perseverance, he also developed the habit of looking up at the starry sky. When he was tired from practicing, when he saw the shining stars, everything became very quiet. He likes this feeling very much. The power of the stars heals scars and cleanses the soul. However, the calm didn't last long. Bart's eyes that were about to close suddenly became sharp. He stood up with a whoosh and turned his head to look to the left in a direction slightly away from the urban area. In his line of sight among them, in that direction, a ray of golden light shines. That's when the imprint he could leave broke out. They are in danger. The two enthusiastic and cheerful women came to mind, and Bart's figure immediately turned into a golden beam and rushed down from the balcony. At night, on the road about 100 meters away from a restaurant named Sugar Factory, Jane and Daisy took the purchased food and prepared to return to the caravan park. Although it is a bit risky for two girls to come out at night in the United States, but fortunately, this city is considered to be a city with a low crime rate. In addition, they all brought anti-wolf spray, so the two girls who are big-hearted don't care. Who would have thought that such a probability would actually cause them to be bumped into? When passing by a relatively dark alley, a few people suddenly jumped out of it, wearing leather-peaked caps. All kinds of tattoos can be seen on the exposed muscles. Metal rings are nailed to the ears on the nose, and the sinister face is full of viciousness. It doesn't look like a good person. The most important thing is that these people are still holding pistols in their hands. All of a sudden, the anti-wolf spray of the two women completely lost its effect. Jane was very brave and stood in front of Daisy. Facing the black and empty muzzle, she said loudly, "Hey, I can give you money if you want it, but please don't hurt us." Okay. Although Jane is usually a little confused, she is not stupid. On the contrary, she is very smart. Otherwise, she would not become a well-known astronomer. She knows that the most important thing at this time is to protect herself first. The men held guns and watched Jane take out the wallet from his pocket and took out all the cash from it and couldn't help being stunned for a moment. One of the young men with dreadlocks who looked like a leading white man smiled when he saw this. "Wow, I like a smart girl like you. Money is not in a hurry," I thought. "How about we have a drink today?" Even though he said so, he still reached out and took the money first. Listening to his words, several other people also smiled, full of excitement. Apparently, Jane and Daisy's beautiful faces and figures had made them think differently. Facing those green eyes emitting faint green light like hungry wolves, Jane's heart sank, and she couldn't help feeling a little desperate. Daisy, who was behind Jane, also saw that the situation was wrong, swallowed with fear on her face. And just when Jane was about to take out the anti-wolf spray for a desperate fight, the surrounding temperature seemed to drop a few degrees, and at the same time, a slightly magnetic and deep voice came from her ear. What an interesting scene. The sudden sound immediately attracted the gangsters' attention. They turned their heads and looked not far away. On the side of the road not far away, a handsome man in a black windbreaker with a pale face walked over unhurriedly. Seeing this man, the leading Caucasian youth immediately raised his gun and pointed it at him, and said in a bad tone, "If you don't want to die, immediately leave money and leave me. This is not a place for your hero to save the beauty." Except for one person who was still pointing a gun at Jane and Daisy to prevent them from escaping, the others also turned around with their guns. But the pale and handsome man didn't seem to see the muzzle that was enough to beat him into a sieve. Still approaching on his own, his dark eyes skipped over a few people, put on Jane and Daisy, and said softly, "Tell me, who is the source of that strange power in your body?" This behavior immediately angered the gangster who blocked the road and robbed money, and the white young man shouted angrily, "Damn bastard, what am I?" However, before the words were finished, death had already arrived, and the faces of these people suddenly began to collapse and turn black, as if their souls had been swallowed by something, and the collapsed faces were extremely horrifying. In an instant, they completely lost their lives, and the corpses fell to the ground with a few thuds. This strange scene, the two girls, Jane and Daisy, couldn't help shivering. He looked at the man standing in front of him with fear on his face. The man closed his eyes slightly, raised his head slightly and sniffed his nose gently, and finally opened his eyes, showing an evil smile. "A powerful force that has never been seen before. Can you tell me, who does this power belong to?" I don't understand. What kind of power?" Although Jane was a little scared, she still pretended to be calm. The man looked straight into Jane's eyes and finally nodded. "I trust you." However, Jane and Daisy breathed a sigh of relief. He suddenly raised his hand, and under the horrified eyes of the two women, his hand was getting closer. But what was unexpected was that when the hand was about 30 centimeters away from Jane, a ray of dazzling holy golden barrier suddenly enveloped the two women. On the barrier, mysterious patterns made of stars could be seen with the naked eye. In a trance, it seemed that an angry roar could be heard in the ear. Boom! The moment the man's hand touched the golden barrier, strands of violent golden lightning burst out, and the raging golden arc instantly burned the palm of the man's hand, turning it into ashes. The man didn't even have time to cry out in pain. A terrifying golden impact blasted directly into his chest from the barrier. Boom, boom, boom. The latter didn't have time to react at all, and the whole person shot backward like a cannonball, smashing billboards and trash cans along the way, and finally crashed into a closed clothing store. The glass shattered and the roar was deafening. Jane and Daisy just stared blankly at the completely collapsed clothing store in front of them, as well as the man who had been completely buried and could not be seen. Huh, what's going on here? Jane's delicate and beautiful face was full of confusion. Nervous Daisy covered her head with her hands and looked pained. I buy it. I hope we won't bear the loss. I don't want my credit card to add a sum of money. I haven't bought insurance. I don't think we should care about your credit card. Don't you think it's strange? Jin Man was in disbelief. She felt that what happened just today was particularly weird. Not to mention being almost robbed, but a man who appeared inexplicably behind seemed to have saved himself, killed several robbers, and then seemed to want to do something to him, and was suddenly beaten away. It's really strange to say that, but it's good that we're safe. Daisy waved her hand. Jane rolled her eyes. Her best friend had a completely different personality from her. At this time, Jane suddenly seemed to see something in the corner of her eyes, and she suddenly raised her head to look at the sky. In the dark night sky, a shining golden beam of light came straight to this direction with a long tail flame. Jane's pupils shrank, and just as she was about to speak, the golden beam of light had already descended. Boom! A strong gust of wind swept in, causing Jane and Daisy to cover their bodies with both hands unconsciously. The food bags in the blowing hands kept swinging, and the figures unconsciously took 2 steps back. Fortunately, the gust of wind did not last long and calmed down. Jane and Daisy put down their hands, and when they saw the burly man appearing in front of them who didn't know when, they unconsciously called out, "Bart?" The visitor was none other than Bart, who rushed over from the hotel. Seeing the two girls safe and sound, Bart was slightly relieved. Chapter 85. Jane Foster's brain supplement. Bart glanced at the dead corpses under his feet, and when he noticed the sunken and dark faces on these corpses, his eyes froze slightly. It's good that you're fine, Bart. Why are you here? Just now, Jane stammered and couldn't complete her speech. It was strange just now, but now Bart's appearance is even more strange. Daisy patted her chest and said exaggeratedly, "Wow, the macho. You feel so safe when you appear." Smiley face. I felt that you triggered the mark I left, so I rushed over, but it seems that it should be a little late now. Bart explained, glanced at the collapsed ruins across the street, and frowned. Oh, by the way, that person just now. Jane pointed at the collapsed clothing store, trying to tell what happened just now, but Bart shook his head and interrupted. He has already run away. Ran away? Jane was a little puzzled. She had already been crushed in by stones, and she didn't see anyone running out. But after thinking about the strange things that happened before, I don't worry about it anymore. Just when Jane was about to say something, another golden light beam shot from a distance, rushing towards her in an instant, and the two girls couldn't help but widen their eyes when they witnessed all this with their own eyes. The golden air blast exploded, and Elvis emerged from it. He was wearing a black jacket and jeans, and he also wore 727 necklace around his neck. The hanging gold necklace depicted a mighty and majestic lion. Elvis first nodded to the two women as a greeting, then turned his head and looked around the nearby streets for a few times. Is it him? The same breath. It should be him, but he runs very fast. How did he find them? I don't know. I should have noticed the imprint of power I left on them. This guy's concealment method can actually hide from us. It seems that his identity and strength are not simple. Well, he is dangerous. We must find him as soon as possible. Bart and Elvis had a brief exchange, while Jane and Daisy stood aside with blank faces, but they probably understood a little bit. That is, the man Bart and Elvis were looking for just now people. The result was run away. Bart, you were on Route 38 before. Maybe it wasn't because of a friend's prank. Jane suddenly reacted and rolled her eyes at Bart. Obviously, she and Daisy were deceived by this big guy who looked simple and honest. When Daisy heard what her best friend said, she also reacted, pouting her cheeks and looking angry, but anyone with a discerning eye could tell that Daisy was joking. I'm sorry, you deliberately concealed it from you. Just because I was afraid that you wouldn't believe it. Bart scratched his head and said apologetically. After all, when he said that he was here to track down the devil, Jane and Daisy had to treat him as a psychopath. Okay, you lied to us. You must treat us to a meal tomorrow. Jane also understood, but said jokingly. Bart nodded seriously naturally. Let's leave first. The police are here. Elvis's eyes moved slightly. Bart nodded. Jane and Daisy naturally agreed, believing that if they were caught by the police, they would definitely be in trouble. After all, several people died here. Bart and Elvis followed the two girls back to the caravan park. There were not many people in the park in the early morning. There was a special place for caravans to park, and there were many caravans nearby, but all of them had turned off their lights. Apparently, they had already gone to sleep. It is a big river in the city. In the quiet night, you can hear some bustling insects calling. Quiet and cozy. The presence of streetlights on the road along the river gave some light to the originally dark park. In the RV, the four of them sat on the seats, and on the table was the supper bought by the two girls. Daisy couldn't wait to take out the food from it and began to eat. For a while, the whole caravan was filled with the aroma of food. Jane also wanted to invite Bart and Elvis to eat together, but she refused with a smile. After all, with the appetites of the two, this little thing might be stuffed between the teeth at most. Back in the RV, Jane and Daisy relaxed a lot and asked while stuffing food into their mouths. Bart, who are you? Why is that strange guy looking for us? Elvis and I are both saints, and we accepted the Pope's assignment to find the demons that descended on the world. But Bart didn't hide anything. There are no hidden rules in the sanctuary. It's all up to them. It doesn't matter if the identity is revealed to Jane and Daisy. It's just that when the two girls heard Bart's words, the action of frantically stuffing food into their mouths immediately froze. Their widened, beautiful eyes and puffed cheeks looked quite funny, and Elvis and Bart immediately laughed come out. I think you should just swallow the food in your mouth and talk. Elvis smiled and took out 2 bottles of juice from the side bag and handed them over. The two girls came back to their senses at this time, and after taking a sip of the juice impatiently, Jane said loudly, Are you saints? Because I was too surprised. My voice was a little strange. Daisy is even more excited. Saints. Ever since she learned about the goddess Athena in the video of the Parthenon temple on the ancient battlefield of the gods on the internet, she has been deeply impressed by the unyielding spirit of the saints. Brave, great, and convincing. Of course, handsome is also really handsome. This cannot be denied. Unexpectedly, there are 2 saints sitting in front of them. One of them is still a friend, and they still follow each other on social media. This can be said to be the only one in the world. If this news is sold, it will at least be worth millions. Tens of millions of dollars. At this moment, Jane realized that her voice was too loud, so she quickly lowered her voice, shrunk her head, and said mysteriously, So you are here to perform a mission. Is that demon very powerful? Protecting the world and carrying out missions sounds great. How can I keep her from being excited? Jane's mind has already started to brainstorm. Even the subsequent scripts have been thought out, just like in those film and television dramas. The heroine meets the warrior who protects the earth. The heroine encounters a powerful and evil demon, and then the super soldier fights the devil to save the heroine, experience life and death crises again and again. Finally, when the heroine was in danger, the heroic warrior broke out. He defeated and eliminated the demon, saved the heroine, and successfully protected the earth. Thinking about it this way, isn't she the heroine? So romantic. Jane substituted into it and immediately showed a silly smile, but when she noticed Bart's slightly helpless face, she woke up from that fantasy. Well, no matter how you look at it, it is impossible for her and Bart to make it, and there is no feeling of excitement at all. Romance or something, just think about it. Bart still explained a little bit. You should know about the incident in the Gulf of California, right? You also participated? Well, the opponent that time was a very powerful demon. That demon left us, and we wanted to track down his whereabouts. This time the demon may be related to him. Wow, it's incredible. Daisy looked terrified. She felt that Bart's world was completely different from what she imagined, full of dangers. There are actually terrible demons that even the saints can't beat. Then what do you do now? Jane asked, concerned. The power mark I left you before has injured him, and he should still be hidden, but this time it will be less difficult for us to track. Wow, thank you. Jane thanked. Thanks to Bart, otherwise they might really be in danger. Not to mention the devil, they were almost robbed of money by those gangsters. You should rest as soon as possible. As long as you don't encounter particularly powerful monsters in the future, my mark will protect you. Bart's eyes moved, and he stood up voluntarily. Well, I hope I don't have nightmares today. Jane shrugged her shoulders. Although she really wanted to chat for a while, she didn't hold back too much. Bart and Elvis left the RV, said goodbye to Jane Daisy, and walked out of the park. Elvis didn't wait for Bart to speak, and said first, "Did you perceive him?" "I think he's in pain right now." Trident Building, New York. Hill hurriedly knocked on the door of Director Fury's office, following Nick Fury's steady, "Come in." Hill opened the door and walked in. Going straight to the desk, she looked directly at Fury, who was sitting behind the desk processing the documents, and before the director asked, she spoke first. "Sir, we found traces of the Saint Seiya in Texas." The word Saint Seiya immediately raised Fury's head, and he didn't even care about the documents to be processed in his hand. "Do you know who it is?" "Bart in Taurus and Elvis in Leo. It hasn't appeared in 3 months. Why did the two of them suddenly appear in Texas?" Fury muttered to himself, and then continued to ask, "Have you found the reason?" According to the police report in Texas, 6 people died. They were all registered robbers in the local area. The way of death was very strange. The flesh and blood cells in their bodies were all necrotic due to unknown reasons. Another clothing store collapsed. Hill reported. "There is no video left at the scene. That street happened to be a dead end, but the camera inside the clothing store happened to capture a picture of less than a second." Hill handed the tablet to Fury, who took it and clicked on the video. The picture is 5.0 shot by the camera on the innermost side of the clothing store, just in time to capture a figure breaking through the door of the clothing store. Accompanied by vibrations and loud noises, the picture disappears again. After that, there is another picture, which is a freeze-frame picture that has been enlarged and cleared by shield. Inside was a man wearing a black windbreaker with an extremely pale face. Under the man's face, there was an ugly mouth full of sharp teeth. Not only that, but there was a hole in his chest that exuded a golden and black breath, which made Fury's eyes condense. We did not search for his information based on face recognition and database comparison. What do you think, Hill? Putting down the tablet, Fury leaned back in the chair, crossing his arms. "I think the Taurus and the Lion were dispatched at the same time to hunt down this man, and they should have failed, allowing this man to escape successfully." Hill did not hesitate. Fury frowned. "What do you think he was able to hunt down in front of 2 gold saints and escape successfully?" The word Fury used was weird, something, and he clearly didn't think the man was human. Hill also noticed this, but she was not surprised. He must not be a human being. He should be some kind of monster or demon. Saint fighters have never been involved in human affairs. The things they deal with should be related to the earth. It's about safety. Chapter 86. Black Demon's fear and ambition immediately mobilize all our resources and focus on Texas. I want to know what happened there, and why such a thing suddenly appeared and attracted the attention of 2 gold saints. Fury sat up straight, stretched out his hand and tapped on the table without any doubt. "Yes, sir." Now anything related to Saint Seiya has become the most concerned thing of all countries. They are worried that the other party will appear in their own country, and they are also worried that they will not appear. No, often contradictory. The former is because once it attracts the attention of the Saint Seiya, there must be extremely terrifying monsters or events. The latter is because if there are demons in the territory in the Gulf of California, if there is no saint, they will be powerless to resist. Fury is no exception. Compared with others, he cares more about what the saints care about. Nowadays, every time a saint fighter appears, it represents a catastrophic event, and there are many things behind the disaster. Fury now only hopes that 16 is a demon, but he must not be any other monster. Then a lot of monster races with strong backgrounds were involved. Otherwise, he will doubt whether the Avengers he wants to form are really capable of facing this group of terrifying monsters. Even if his last hole card is that he is in outer space, he doesn't know how long it will take to return to Earth. When the other party comes, it is estimated that the day Lily is cold. Thinking of the Avengers, Fury blinked with one eye and asked, "How is Tony?" "Tony, Clinton, and Natasha have already met, and they have a good time getting along. We are leaving tomorrow morning, and we plan to meet Dr. Bruce Banner tomorrow night." Especially Clinton and Tony, the two looked at each other very badly. As an agent, Clinton paid the most attention to execution and action. Tony's pride and laxity made him very uncomfortable. As for the latter, I naturally don't believe in the agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and will say something poisonous from time to time. This made Clinton even more displeased. Fortunately, with Natasha as the glue, I believe the team atmosphere will not be a problem. Fury nodded slightly. Tell them what happened in Texas and let them pay more attention. Understood. In an abandoned repair shop at the westernmost edge of downtown Dajou, it was dark and empty, except for the moonlight shining through the window, giving a glimmer of light. But it still looks so eerie. What kind of power is this that can actually erode my body? In the darkest corner of the repair shop, a man in a black windbreaker who escaped sat on the ground, leaning against a long wooden board standing on the wall, no matter the ground was wet or dirty. Smiley face. The handsome pale face is full of coldness. There is still a trace of fear in my heart. He happened to meet those two human women in the urban area before, and he also noticed the strange power in those two women. Relying on the specialness and ability of his own body and soul, he tried to catch the two women, but he didn't expect that there would be a mark on the other side. He inspired the other side's mark, and it was directly pierced through the chest. Not only that, but he also noticed that two terrifying auras were approaching rapidly. So far apart, he could feel the aura that made his soul tremble. Without hesitation, he chose to escape. It was terrible, he knew, and he was afraid. He lowered his head and glanced at the huge blood hole in his chest, the churning black air, and the golden air that couldn't be erased at all. He gritted his teeth. Tonight, he almost lost his mind with anger. He wanted to tear up the bodies of those people and eat their souls, but the reality was cruel. He could only hide and hide like a sewer rat. Wong. At this time, gusts of cold wind came from outside the repair shop. He looked up, frowned, and immediately stood up, tightening the windbreaker to cover the blood hole in his chest. Outside the repair shop, a cloud of black mist quickly flew in front of the man. The black wind was blowing, and a figure emerged from it, with dirty clothes, a gray face, and dark eyes full of evil. Black Heart Demon. Feng Yimou grinned with his fangs. Black Heart Demon stared at Feng Yimou. Why only you? At this time, a puddle of water on the ground not far away began to squirm, and eventually the fluid turned into a ball of water, forming a man with long black hair dripping all over his body. The ground surged, and another bald man wearing metal ingot leather armor slowly surged up. Why did you call us? The water demon touched his sticky face and looked at the Black Heart Demon. Facing the gazes of the three, the Black Heart Demon replied calmly, I came here to find the contract of Saint Van Gonzale. According to legend, this contract was stolen and hidden in a cemetery not far from here. Now you have to help me find it. So what if we find it? We could have the world, one city, and one city after another. Impossible. The Earth Demon shook his head decisively. Even if you can get that contract, it is impossible to get these 727 worlds. He licked his tongue. Not long ago, your father Mephisto came to this world across dimensions and fought against a group of terrifying warriors. After that, it was rumored that he was defeated, so he returned to hell. As for that group of warriors, each one possesses extremely terrifying power, and behind them stands a divine mansion. Do you understand? Black Heart Demon, there is a in this world. The meaning of a god's residence is self-evident. Even in hell, it is absolutely comparable to a powerful demon or even an evil god, or even stronger. God has not come yet, but his subordinates beat Mephisto back to hell. Wanting to rule a world with a god's mansion is simply a dream. At least, he thinks that Black Heart Demon can't do it. If I can have that contract, I can have the most powerful power in the world. Even my dear father can't compare to it. Do you guys think I have the ability to rule the world? The Black Heart Demon's pale face flashed on the other hand, evil and powerful. The few people watching couldn't help lowering their heads. We get it. No, the 40,000 words every day is too bad. Buddies have to roll it up and make a wave of 20,000 words tomorrow. Chapter 87. Saint Van Gonza's contract, however, we still have another threat, and that is the knight created by your father. He will drive us out regardless. Feng Yimou said hoarsely. The knight is Mephisto, through signing a contract with people, using the devil's vengeful spirit to transform it into his knight. He has the powerful ability to kill all demons. This vengeful spirit has only one purpose, to destroy demons. When the knight completes the contract, Mephisto can capture the knight's soul and enslave him. It is also said that the appearance of the Ghost Rider was specially created by the birdmen in heaven to deal with the demons. But no matter what, the demons are very afraid of knights. All the abilities of the opponent pose a great threat to the demon. Rumble. While he was speaking, there was a huge roar of an engine in the distance, accompanied by hoarse and manic laughter. Boom, boom, boom. The terrible roaring sound wave shattered all the remaining glass in the repair shop, attracting the attention of the Black Heart Demon and the Water Demon. The Black Heart Demon looked towards the door of the repair shop, tilted his head slightly, and said coldly, "Ah, he's already here." The three Water Demons looked at each other, and immediately turned into water respectively, and the wind and earth disappeared in place. And the Black Heart Demon touched his chest with his hands, feeling the pain that was constantly spreading. His eyes flashed a touch of coldness. It may take a very long time to completely repair himself. He can't wait. The contract of Saint he has to get it. The roar of the engine and the insolent laughter in his ears became louder and louder. He raised his head slightly and walked towards the outside of the factory. A dark cloud in the sky blocked part of the moonlight, weakening a lot of the remaining light in this dark land. In the distance on the muddy and wet road outside the factory, the Black Heart Demon can see that the burning flames are getting more and more luxuriant. In the blink of an eye, he saw a skull wearing black leather armor and chains around him, burning the fire of hell. Riding a cool ghost Harley motorcycle, the high-speed spinning tires have turned into rings of fire. Approaching at a terrifying speed, powerful energy poured out, leaving a long line of fire along the way. The garbage bins, trees, and billboards on both sides of the road were all distorted by the intense heat, and the places they passed were in a mess. Boom! The ghost-faced Harley motorcycle entangled in the flames stopped at a position about 10 meters away from the Black Heart Demon. Black leather shoes stepped on the ground, and this human skeleton wearing a cool leather armor got off the car. Taking 2 steps, pointing at the Black Heart Demon with his skeleton finger, he said hoarsely and coldly, "Go back to your hell." Staring at the pair of black and hollow skull eyes, the Black Heart Demon spread his hands and said with a smile, "Tell me, why did you sell your soul to the devil? Look at you. Everything you do is meaningless, and you will only become a slave to my father in the end. You can't even manipulate your power at all." The Ghost Rider put down his hands and remained silent. The flames of burning on the skull flickered, as if he was thinking. But in the next second, the knight suddenly reached out and took off the chain wrapped around his body, swung it twice. The hellfire attached it, and then threw it heavily at the Black Heart Demon. The latter didn't even struggle, letting the chains of flames wrap around his neck. The knight's right hand is backward, and the Black Heart Demon is dragged in front of him without struggling. The knight grabs the Black Heart Demon's neck with his left hand and lifts it close to him. The skull faces the Black Heart Demon's pale face, and the knight looks directly into the Black Heart Demon's eyes, hoarsely said, "Look into my eyes. Your soul is contaminated with the souls of innocent people. So now, accept the pain." A red light suddenly lit up in the dark and empty skull's eyes. The fire of is already burning from it, and he will judge the demons before him and burn his soul. However, what the knight didn't expect at all was that the Black Heart Demon looked directly at the knight's eyes of judgment, and he was unscathed. The knight's arm loosened slightly, and the subtle movement proved that he was in doubt. Black Heart Demon gave the answer. "Eye of judgment, you can judge the soul, but unfortunately, I don't have a soul, knight." The Black Heart Demon grabbed the knight's wrist with his right hand, slightly forced him to let go, and then slightly pushed the palm of his left hand on the knight's chest. Terrifying power burst out. The knight seemed to be hit by a locomotive, and the whole person flew backward like a cannonball. Boom! Leaping over the ghost-face Harley motorcycle, it slammed heavily on a car parked not far away. The terrible impact smashed the entire front of the car into a dent, and a piece of broken glass was splashed. But then the knight stood up slowly as if nothing happened at all, stepped on the ground again, and looked at the Black Heart Demon. "You have no soul. You are weaker than I imagined, knight. Your existence is like a tool. Are you willing to give your soul to that demon in the end?" Black Heart Demon stared at the knight. He saw the essence of the knight. Based on his current situation, if he could, he would not want to be an enemy of the knight's. His goal was to win the contract of Saint Van Gonzale, so he didn't want any accidents along the way. Obviously, the Cavaliers were such an accident. Although he wasn't afraid of the other party's ability, having such a guy making trouble all the time would make people irritated. What's more, there are 2 mysterious and terrifying powerhouses in this city. The Black Heart Demon just wanted to keep a low profile, and it wasn't because of the knights that he attracted the attention of those 2. "You are guilty. It's a pity that the knight doesn't care about that much at all. The spirit of revenge has only one heart, and that is to punish all guilty people. He is like a ruthless robot, only following the program to execute his own orders." After finishing speaking, he grabbed the scrapped car with his skeleton hand, pinched and twisted the shell, made an unpleasant and harsh creaking sound, and then threw it out with a little force. The car roared like a huge cannonball, attacking the Black Heart Demon. Stupid guy, the Black Heart Demon cursed secretly when he saw this, stretched out his hand and waved lightly, and with a bang, he saw the car freeze at a position about 2 meters away from him, and then was cut into 2 halves by an invisible force. However, at the moment when the car was separated into 2 halves, a chain pierced through like a poisonous snake. The Black Heart Demon was instantly pierced, and then hit the ground, creating a not small shallow pit. But then the Black Heart Demon disappeared in place, and it turned out that this was just an illusion created by him. The knight possessed the eyes of judgment, instantly penetrated and locked the position of the Black Heart Demon, exerted force again, recovered the chain, and entangled the car that was split into 2 halves in midair. The raging hellfire turned it into 2 of fire in the blink of an eye. Immediately exerting force again, 2 of fire roared and flew behind. Following his figure, the 2 of fire smashed towards the Black Heart Demon who was trying to attack the knight behind him. Facing the 2 menacing fireballs, the latter frowned slightly, turned into a cloud of black smoke and disappeared again. Boom, a huge explosion sound and 2 flames exploded, smashing the road behind him, and the flames burned, illuminating the road. With his back to the flames, the knight turned his head and looked around, as if looking for the disappearing Black Heart Demon. He walked forward step by step with heavy steps, but he didn't notice a puddle of sewage inexplicably appeared under his feet in front of him. The knight stepped on it without any scruples. At that moment, the puddle of sewage immediately seemed to be alive, generally flow up. The sewage was like an iron clip firmly grasping the knight's ankle, and the knight lowered his head slightly to look. Around, a cloud of black smoke swirled wildly around the knight, instantly turning into a hurricane and shaking his figure. The sewage loosened the knight's ankle, allowing the knight's figure to start shaking, and then the sewage flowed and swelled, forming a huge hammer, and the ground behind him is like sewage. One after the other, the water and soil formed a hammer to sandwich the knight in the middle, whistling and hitting together. Boom. Smiley face. Sewage and debris splashed everywhere, crackling on the ground, filled with dust and smoke. The next second, water demons, earth demons, and wind demons appeared around, and the Black Heart Demon stood not far from the knight at some point, looking indifferently at the looming fire in the dust and smoke. When the dust dissipated, the knight was seen kneeling on the ground on one knee, and the originally raging hellfire on the skull could be faintly seen as if it was going to be extinguished. The face of the skeleton switched back and forth with the mature face of a middle-aged man. The face was distorted, as if it was in pain or struggling. What a weak knight. This is not very similar to the one in the legend. Feng Mo's voice was hoarse, and he laughed ferociously. It seems that he is just a new generation of knights who have just awakened. The water demon wiped the sticky sewage all over his face and flicked it casually. Ghost Rider has always been a legend in hell. A long time ago, when Ghost Rider appeared, he killed countless demons, causing many demons to hate and fear him. But the one in front of him was too weak, and they didn't even think about being so weak. Let's kill him then. I've never killed a Ghost Rider before. The Earth Demon licked his lips jokingly, his face full of excitement and ferocity. It's useless. None of you can kill him, unless you can get rid of the vengeful spirit in his body, but unfortunately we can't do it, unless I get the contract of St. Van Gonzalez. The Black Heart Demon shook his head. If he could kill him, he wouldn't want to instigate Ghost Rider in the first place. Come on, don't waste time with him. Black Heart Demon Juin, Zhao Liao Zhao, prepares to leave and continue to search for the contract. However, just as he turned around, his footsteps stopped abruptly, his pale and handsome face changed, and his dark pupils stared straight ahead. Seeing this, the 3 Feng Mo who were about to leave with the Black Heart Demon followed their gazes in confusion. What did Feng Mo see? It turned out that not far from the crowd, a figure stood in the middle of the road at some point, with an extremely burly figure, wearing a red coat, white lining, sweatpants, and white sail shoes. The strong muscles almost burst the shirt. The most important thing is that the opponent's pupils have already been rendered in emerald green, and it seems that mysterious stars can be seen looming in them. Wisps of terrifying pressure are spreading from his body. Even though they were separated by such a long distance, the 3 demons couldn't help but feel fear, and their bodies and souls trembled. Powerful to the point of inconceivable horror. Such a thought flashed through Sammo's mind. The Black Heart Demon even felt the constant pain in his chest intensify. He stared at the burly figure in front of him, tilted his head slightly without leaving any traces, and looked behind him from the corner of his eye. 100 meters behind him was a knight. At the top of the curved street lamp, there is also a tall and straight figure standing. Damn, it was actually surrounded. When exactly did it happen? The Black Heart Demon's face darkened. He knew that this was going to be difficult. Chapter 88. Ghost Rider. It was Bart and Elvis who came. Elvis glanced at the half-squatting Ghost Rider on the ground with a high profile, and then looked at the Black Heart Demon and the three demons. With light steps, he jumped from the curved street lamp to the ground. I didn't expect that there would be an unexpected harvest. Walking at an unhurried pace, he slowly walked towards the knight. It seemed slow, but the speed was very fast. Almost in the blink of an eye, the distance of 100 meters had passed in an instant. Just standing by his side, Elvis looked down at the extremely cool human skeleton in front of him with great interest. The fire of hell, one body with two souls, the soul of an ordinary person, and a special soul full of hatred, burdened with curses and contracts. It is really an interesting species. Looking carefully at the knight, it seemed that he didn't pay attention to the Black Heart Demon and the three demons in front of him at all. But the latter was completely devoid of anger. The Black Heart Demon's thoughts are messy, and there is only one thought in his mind now, and that is how to run away. He didn't expect to be approached by these two mysterious and terrifying existences with the devil's best hiding method. As for fighting, it is completely impossible to fight. Although he seems to have no soul, he can feel that his body and mind are almost frozen by the aura leaked by the opponent. The Black Heart Demon even faintly felt his father's powerful aura from these two people. Deep, powerful, sacred. It makes people breathless. Fuck. What are you kidding? This breath makes me not even have the thought to resist. What kind of existence are they? At this time, the Earth Demon's mentality could no longer be stretched, and his face was almost desperate. He wanted to run, but he found that his body and abilities seemed completely out of his control. Although I know that there is a God's mansion in this world. But just after being summoned, someone came to the door. This is too bad luck. Hey, Black Heart Demon, what should we do now? The Water Demon was also a little flustered, and hurriedly asked the Black Heart Demon. The Black Heart Demon grimaced and said nothing. Instead, Bart in the distance spoke. Huh, do you still want to run away at this time? Are you underestimating us? If you run away, will the Pope give us a hard education? Just a few little devils who still want to run away in front of themselves and Elvis. Are you afraid you are dreaming? At that time, it is estimated that other partners will laugh at them to death. Whoosh, as soon as the voice fell, Bart's figure disappeared in place instantly. The eyes of the Black Heart Demon and the other three demons changed, and before they could react, the Black Heart Demon was shrouded in shadows. Gold necklace. Just looking at it, he felt that his mind was going to be burned. The Black Heart Demon didn't dare to move. If he was alone, his forehead would be covered with sweat by now. You. The Black Heart Demon raised his head slightly, saw those sharp and indifferent eyes, forced a smile, and just about to speak. His neck was grabbed by a big hand like iron tongs, lifting him up. Stand up. Ho ho, the Black Heart Demon instinctively wanted to struggle, and a thick voice like frost came from his ears. The breath on your body reminds me of some unhappy things. Then, little devil, can you tell me what is the relationship between Mephisto and you? The Black Heart Demon looked up at Bart's cold face and swallowed involuntarily. Even though he was many times Bart's age, but he was as weak as a pitiful quail at this time, and the whole scene looked so funny. However, the three water demons didn't mean to laugh at all. Mephisto, it's my father. After hesitating for a while, the Black Heart Demon still said it, but when he noticed that the pressure around him had increased a bit, and the breath of death was getting stronger, Bifa, he quickly explained again said, although Mephisto is my father, I hate him. I can't wait to kill him. The purpose of my coming to this world is to gain the power to overthrow his rule. What a loving father and filial son. Bart couldn't help laughing. He really deserves to be a devil. All family affection is fake. He continued to ask in an oppressive tone, what is the purpose of your smuggling into the world? This? The Black Heart Demon choked. I'm here to find a contract. It is said that it has magical power. If I get him, I can have the power to overthrow Mephisto's rule. The Black Heart Demon spoke half-truth and half-lie. His calculations are very good. The main purpose now is to ensure that he is alive, and the premise is that he must reveal enough information. It's a pity that Bart saw through what was overlooked in the Black Heart Demon's words at a glance, but he didn't expose it, but asked again. Tell me about Mephisto. Speaking of Mephisto, the Black Heart Demon didn't panic at all. He could clearly see that this terrifying and mysterious human being in front of him seemed to have a different hatred for Mephisto. He poured out all the information of Mephisto without any scruples. Mephisto comes from hell. He is known as the Lord of Hell. He has the supreme authority in and is also one of the most powerful rulers in hell. He has been coveting this world since tens of millions of years ago. For this reason, he has waged many intrigues and wars to play with humans, tempt humans to fulfill their wishes, and then sign a contract, and he will be able to obtain the souls of those humans after the transaction is completed. Bart listened quietly, listening to all Mephisto's information, and when the Black Heart Demon explained everything, he nodded with satisfaction. So, what is he? Bart lifted his chin lightly, signaling the knights behind the Black Heart Demons. The Black Heart Demon also honestly confessed. It's really interesting, Demon Lord, God, Heaven, Angel, Vengeful Spirit, Ghost Rider. Bart put down the neck of Black Heart Demon, thinking. This information is very important, allowing Bart and Elvis to understand more essential information about the world. Hell, the devil has appeared, and now there is a new force, Heaven. Both of them are human beings, and they have heard of the name of God since they were young. According to legend, God is the creator God, who created the world and is omnipotent. Both the devil and heaven covet the world. Angels and demons have also waged wars several times, and there are many conspiracies in them. Bart and Elvis don't know about them. Although Black Heart Demon is the son of Mephisto, his level of strength is not high, and he cannot get in touch with things at the level of Mephisto. But Bart and Elvis still sensed a trace of peacekeeping. Thinking at a high speed, Bart and Elvis in the distance looked at each other. What should we do now? I do not know either, Tao. The Pope's order is for us to investigate clues. The two communicated with their spiritual power, and both of them hesitated. Their purpose of this trip has been achieved. They have found and beaten the smuggling demon, and they have also asked a lot of information about Mephisto. However, what made them more concerned was the power that suddenly popped up from heaven. Will these gods and angels who have never appeared have an impact on the earth and the sanctuary? After thinking for a while, Bart shook his head. This news will be reported to the Pope in the sanctuary later. We don't need to think about these things yet. So what if you worry about heaven? The most important thing for them now is to increase their strength. Otherwise, they will not even be qualified to participate in these things. Now that he had asked the answer he wanted, Bart looked at the Black Heart Demon. Thank you for your information, Mr. Black Heart Demon. But, I'm sorry, as a demon, you should die? While speaking, the Black Heart Demon already sensed something was wrong, and sure enough, Bart's voice fell, and he stretched out his right hand to grab the Black Heart Demon's neck again. You should really want to kill Mephisto. I can help you. The Black Heart Demon grabbed Bart's wrist with both hands, and the turbulent magic power continued to erupt, trying to break free while screaming unwillingly. However, Bart's attitude was very firm. He met the Black Heart Demon, and his loud voice spread throughout the street. I do hate your father, but I also want to cut off his head and tear his soul with my own hands, instead of using you up to some tricks. Boom. His eyes shone with dazzling golden light, and the majestic small universe in his body was burning with raging flames. With him as the center, vast and sacred energy erupted, and the extremely powerful impact raged in all directions. Everything along the way was blown away. The golden ripples engulfed him like a torrent. In an instant, they were annihilated and turned into the dust of the universe. The monstrous golden beam of light rushed straight to Lien, connecting the pitch-black sky and illuminating the night. Rumble, the ground cracked and collapsed, and the dense cracks spread wantonly like spider webs, and the figures of Black Heart Demon and Bart were completely engulfed in the golden beam of light. In the distance, Elvis was standing next to the Ghost Rider. His eyes glowed with golden light. Facing the huge impact, he didn't even move. The terrifying air wave that swept along the way suddenly separated automatically, becoming two halves. He was not affected in the slightest. As for the Ghost Rider beside him, he was still quiet and was blessed by Yuin. Roar, no. What kind of power is this? Why can it hurt me, I said. I can help you. Help you kill Mephisto? Among the golden beams of light that shot straight into the sky, came the desperate and unwilling roar of the Black Heart Demon, and the layers of repeated sounds pierced the sky. He wanted to pray for the mercy of the desperately powerful human being. But he is a devil after all. Bart has never been kind to evil and devils. He kept pouring out his own energy. His hair, the hem of his red coat, and the necklace were dancing wildly with the strong wind. At this moment, he was like a god's mansion, indifferent and powerful. He just looked at the body of the black heart demon in his hand in silence, slowly disintegrated into wisps of black smoke, and was annihilated by the mighty small universe. Finally, the golden beam of light dissipated. It also means that the son of Mephisto, the ambitious and rebellious black heart demon, died completely. All the turbulent airflow calmed down, and Bart shook his hands casually, looking at Elvis or the Ghost Rider. This guy is quite difficult to kill. There seems to be a very pure evil energy in his body. Fortunately, he is not strong enough. Otherwise, it would take a lot of effort to kill him. Bart was a little surprised. After all, the black heart demon was almost the same as an ordinary little devil in his eyes. Smiley face. It's completely like delivering food, but it takes a lot of strength to kill it. I can only lament that he really deserves to be the son of Mephisto. Even sons are so hard to kill, and my father is even harder to kill. Chapter 89. The worries of the Demon King. What about this guy? I don't know either. This person has two souls in one body. There is an ordinary person's soul in his body, and there is also a spirit of revenge. The two souls and the body have been combined. We can't do it if we want to expel the spirit of revenge. L. Weiss studied the night and shook his head. TCH, it's really difficult. Forget it. Let the Pope decide. At least he should not be a villain, and he will try criminals. I think this is very good. Elvis didn't care. Ghost Rider is essentially to punish criminals and judge criminals. In a sense, it can be regarded as doing good deeds. Although their group of saint fighters are to protect the earth, they certainly will not take action against ordinary criminals at will. First of all, when it is the police, and secondly, they don't have that leisure time. I usually don't mind shooting him when I meet him. Okay, let's leave first. We have to find that St. Van Gonzel contract first. That thing should have a lot of effect on Mephisto. Can't let him get it. During this speech, the faintly extinguished hellfire on the Ghost Rider's skull, which was originally silent, suddenly ignited. He stood up, and a pair of scary skull eyes swept over Bart and Elvis. You guys are innocent. A hoarse voice came from the lower jaw of the skeleton. He walked towards his own chariot and stepped onto the extremely cool ghost-faced Harley chariot, accompanied by the roar of the boom engine. Manic and arrogant laughter came from the mouth. The car started. The flames of the two tires burned fiercely, and green smoke was emitted as the tires rubbed against the ground. The ghost-faced Harley-Davidson chariot carrying the Ghost Rider disappeared at the end of the road, leaving only a long line of fire. Bart and Elvis didn't stop them. Why do I feel that the direction he's going seems to be in the same direction as our destination? Bart scratched his head. Let's go. It seems that this Ghost Rider should feel something. Whoosh, as an air wave exploded. The two figures turned into golden light beams and shot away in the direction of the Ghost Knight. The surrounding area of the abandoned repair shop was calm again. It's just that this place has become a mess, with large and small deep pits, long ditches on the ground, scrapped cars, twisted old billboards, street lights, trash cans, etc., which prove what happened here before. Wait until everything is quiet. An old man wearing a black windbreaker-style suit, wearing a black round hat, and holding a civilization stick suddenly appeared. He looked at Bart, the end of the road where Elvis and Ghost Rider disappeared, and murmured, "This is really sad news, my son. Your rebellion and ambition will eventually lead to your destruction. This world is no longer the original world. It is full of crises anytime and anywhere." Mephisto sighed hypocritically. As for the rebellious brat, Black Heart Demon, he didn't feel sad at all when he died, and wanted to overthrow his own rule. Such a rebellious son deserved to die. Then Mephisto frowned, a sense of urgency rising in his heart. Acting in the Gulf of California that day, it seemed that I overacted, which made the gang of saint fighters hate themselves to the bone and wish to destroy themselves. Originally, there were countless people like this in his years. He can completely ignore it. They are just a group of ants who have been played with, but these teenagers are completely different. Each of them has amazing talents and strengths. The speed of progress is too fast. At the beginning, his self-confidence was completely crushed, and he was completely ignored by him. But not long after, the relationship between the two sides, he was quickly pulled in after he was aware of it. And I am afraid that this leap in strength is not flying. Mephisto always feels that maybe it won't be long before these little devils will really be promoted to the same level as him. He even went to like that goddess. A dozen strong men of the same level as him. What kind of concept is this? That was the concept of running away. And he even doubted whether he had the courage to appear in front of such a brat. No, he has to find a way to strengthen his strength. Otherwise you might die. Moreover, Mephisto believed that if the group of teenagers and girls really broke into hell, the goddess Athena, whom he had confirmed his allegiance to, would completely ignore his life and death and let these saints kill him. A person who has no use value will end up being abandoned. He has done a lot of this kind of thing, so he is naturally well versed in it. He didn't want to be an enemy of Athena because it was looking for death, and the opponent's strength had far surpassed him. If Athena really made a move, no matter which dimension he was hiding in, he would be found, and even his soul would be blown away. Then, he can only continue to become stronger, or find a way to escape the golden cicada when the saints come to seek revenge in the future. Mephisto's eyes moved, as if thinking of something. The corners of his mouth curled up, revealing a mysterious smile. Ong, the figure dissipated, and Mephisto left here. Boom. Under the dark night, the skeleton knight, after burning hell, drove his ghost-faced Harley motorcycle, galloping all the way, leaving a line of fire dividing light and darkness. Light, leaving dry bones. The fire in the head of the skeleton knight is getting dimmer and dimmer, as if it will be extinguished at any moment. Finally, at the last moment when the flames disappeared, he came to the destination, a cemetery, where old tombstones were buried, and not far from the destination, there was a dilapidated small house with bright lights, seemed to be awakened by the roar of the knight's engine. Rumble, the locomotive drove slowly in the cemetery, and finally stopped under a tombstone. The skeleton knight sat on the locomotive, overlooking the name on the tombstone. The flames burning in the skull slowly dissipated, and at the same time, a ray of light was gradually illuminating the distant sky above the clouds. The light fell on the distant land, dispelling the darkness. The knight also lowered his head. The original skeleton head now possesses flesh and blood, and has returned to a normal human appearance. Even the ghost-face Harley motorcycle has restored its original cool shape. Chapter 90. The last generation of ghost riders, but at this moment, he just sat on the locomotive and lost consciousness. His body was distorted and he was about to fall down. At the last moment, an old hand rested on his shoulder. This is an old man wearing a denim suit, with a straw hat on his head, white hair on the sideburns, and white beard on his old face. Not far from under the tree, you can see a majestic brown horse looking up at this place with its big head. Side. The black eyes reflected the figure of the unconscious man and the locomotive, seeming a little curious. Unexpectedly, a new knight has appeared. The beam of light from before, looking at the face of the middle-aged man, the old man murmured to himself, While thinking about it, the old man and the horse seemed to feel something, and suddenly raised their heads and looked out of the cemetery. At some point, I saw two tall and straight figures standing there. Through the halo in the distance, the young faces of Bart and Elvis are revealed. The old man froze for a moment, then frowned, and he raised his voice. "Hey, boys, I believe you are not here to see your relatives, are you?" The old man's voice was unhurried, quite a kind of 16-year-old blandness. It also has the unique roughness and humor of the old Texas cowboy. Bart and Elvis walked in. Bart glanced at the man in the old man's arms and said softly, "I didn't expect there to be two ghost riders. Are you the previous generation of ghost rider?" Bart's words made the old man's eyes narrow slightly, and he glanced at the old man in the distance. "You guys made the commotion in the urban area before?" Although it is a question, it is actually affirmative. That's right. There were a few little devils who smuggled into the country, and we took some measures to solve it. Bart also glanced at the mighty and majestic Dama in the distance. The movement is not small +8. The old man breathed a sigh of relief this time, and continued after a pause, "Are you here to chase him? I think he should also be a person who is cursed with %sign equals 3-4, and he won't be what you guys are looking for with mark, sign 7, *2. I didn't come to see him. Is that what you came to find me?" The devil said that he came to the world to find something called the contract of Saint Van Gonzale. That thing should be with you? Facing Bart without concealing the purpose of his trip, the old man was silent for a long time, staring at Bart and Elvis, then shook his head. "I'm sorry, kid. That thing is very important. It concerns a lot. If it is taken by someone, if a demon takes it away, it must be a huge disaster for the world. I can't give it to you lightly." The old man did not hide that the contract was with him, but he would never give it to anyone. This is also the meaning of his life until now. "I admire your greatness, but it's a pity that although you have been guarding, someone has already come to the door," Bart said. His face turned cold, and so did Elvis, who exuded a turbulent, his monstrous killing intent shocked the old man. The horse in the distance has become frenzied, shaking its head, and galloping forward with strong limbs. Zilulu, but the killing intent of the two was not aimed at the old man. Bart clenched his fists. You don't mind if I do it here? Although he asked this question, he didn't wait for the old man's answer at all, but turned around suddenly and punched him. Boom! The domineering and terrifying energy instantly turned into a horn, and instantly attacked a barren open space 1,000 meters away. The old man didn't know why, and under his horrified gaze, an old hand suddenly appeared on the empty space, blocking Bart's giant horn. In an instant, the earth trembled violently, and a huge explosion resounded through the sky. The terrifying explosion cracked the earth, and the dense cracks spread wantonly. The huge impact caused the surrounding weeds and trees to bend. Such power is simply terrifying. The old man was shocked by the power of the young child in front of him. Something that shocked him, the love was far from over, and a deafening roar came. Mephisto! Boom! The ground shook again, and with the air waves, the old man almost couldn't stand still. The hem of his clothes danced wildly, and even the straw hat on his head was blown away. The original two teenagers in front of them disappeared at some point. He kept searching and fixed his eyes. It turned out that the two of them turned into two beams of light and galloped rapidly on the ground, constantly alternating and changing directions, pointing directly at the dust and smoke in the open space thousands of meters away. Little ghosts, you have grown up so fast. Even I am surprised, but unfortunately, it's not enough. In the blink of an eye, two golden figures crashed into the dust and smoke, and with the dull roar, a voice familiar to the old man came from it. The old man's pupil shrank before he could call out that name. The dust and smoke in the distance burst out an incomparably terrifying shock wave, blowing away the dust and smoke, revealing the scene inside. Looking at it with a fixed eye, the old man in a black windbreaker suit and a black round hat held a civilized stick in his right hand to block it. In front of you, an invisible barrier blocked the fists of Bart and Elvis. Mephisto, seeing the face of that person, the old 727 man's eyes flashed with fire, and he said in a low voice, Zilulu, the majestic and mighty horse raised its front hooves and roared to the sky. It seemed to be telling the old man something. However, the old man glanced at the middle-aged man who was still awake in his hand, pondered for a while and shook his head. Wait, those two children are not that simple. Zilulu in the distance, Mephisto saw the two teenagers who were gnashing their teeth in front of them and smiled lightly. It's made great progress. It's just a pity it's not enough. The voice was full of condescending contempt. In the future, these brats may surpass him, but right now, he is still not comparable to these brats. Boom! With a slight force, a vast and ruthless force burst out, and the huge shock wave shook Bart and Elvis into the air. After flying for a full kilometer, the two of them came to a halt. Even so, they still left a long ditch on the ground. Bart stood up straight, shook his slightly numb hands, twisted his neck, and grinned. Hey! The gap between us is narrowing, devil. Guess how long it will take us to surpass you? Chapter 91. The sin of pride. These words seemed to have stimulated Mephisto, whose originally mild face became a little cold. But in fact, Mephisto has no waves in his heart and even wants to scream. If there wasn't a great existence behind these stinky brats that even he feared, would they still want to surpass him? Humph. Anyway, when the time comes, the acting will be enough, and then I will lead to death happily. I will be able to escape my shell and hug my thigh. It is a win-win situation, and the win is numb. Thinking of this, Mephisto was even more motivated. He had a gloomy face, the civilized stick was on the ground, his hands rested on the head of the stick, and his voice was lowered a few times. In this world, in many cases, hard work is not directly proportional to harvest, and you are very lucky. Your talents, countless people are envious of your luck, and luck, you should feel lucky. Arrogance is always the basis for destroying a person. You picked the wrong opponent, kid. As the sound fell, the light scattered across the earth in the distance was instantly swallowed by the night, turning the earth in the early morning into darkness. Black clouds billowed in the sky, and raging thunder intertwined in it. The dull thunder continued to explode in the ears. The gust of wind howled, rolling up dust and sand all over the sky. As far as the eye could see, it was gloomy, depressing, and heavy. The whole scene instantly felt like the doomsday. Under the sky, Mephisto's windbreaker swayed, and his eyes had already turned into darkness. The pitch-black pupils seemed to devour people's souls. Obviously, the Demon King was furious. When the Demon King was angry, the ground was covered in red, and the blood flowed into rivers. This sentence was completely fulfilled at this time. In the distance, even as the previous generation of ghost knights, who had slaughtered and judged countless powerful demons, but facing Mephisto at this moment, however, a trace of fear still couldn't help but grow in his heart. Only then the trace of fear disappeared. Ghost Rider is a person who really walks in the dark and has already honed his tenacious will. It can make even the Ghost Rider fear, which shows how terrifying Mephisto's aura is. However, Bart and Elvis laughed, because the two saw the fear hidden under Mephisto's terrifying appearance at this time. Bart said disdainfully, "Stop pretending there, and use black magic to block the breath here. After all, are you afraid?" Athena. Just like last time, the tyrannical Mephisto felt Athena's small universe and chose to run away in desperation. It was the same this time, and they simply used their strength to isolate this world from the very beginning. Isn't it just to hide himself so that Athena won't notice it? Mephisto, whose mind was poked, became more and more gloomy. But he, who was deep in thought, finally calmed down gradually and simply admitted, "Yes, that God's mansion is indeed powerful, so powerful that I dare not provoke her at all, but I think she should be asleep. In order not to disturb her, that's why this space is cut off. This place has become my domain, my world. In this world, everything we do will not be noticed by the outside world, even if you perish here." The tone gradually became indifferent. The mighty sound filled the space, like a thunderclap that shook the ground and the wind howled. The old man looked serious, thinking secretly, Mephisto is indeed afraid of that goddess, but for the sake of the contract, he did not hesitate to take risks. Does it seem that he feels a crisis? The more this is the case, the less he can hand over the contract to the Demon King. The old man glanced at the two tall and unyielding teenagers in front of him, and his overwhelming fighting spirit almost turned into reality, which was incredible. It seems that they are the saints under the command of the goddess. If the contract is handed over to them, the old man pondered for a moment, then secretly made a decision. At this moment Mephisto's voice came. "Carter Slay, my knight. Hand over the contract you hid. You know what he means to me." The old man looked up, and the eyes of the Demon King standing far away had already looked over. The old Carter of the previous generation of knights casually put the unconscious middle-aged man on the locomotive, picked up the round cap that fell on the ground, and walked slowly go out, stand side by side with Bart and Elvis, and face the Demon King Mephisto. "I just knew what it means to you, so I took it away in the first place, Mephisto." The old voice was full of determination, and that resolute face made him exude an indomitable momentum. "Ha, that contract is indeed in your hands, cowboy." Bart squinted at old Carter, however. "I have to say, you did a great job. Boy, my mission is to protect this world, not help Mephisto destroy it." Old Carter laughed uncontrollably, and then said in a low voice, "Can you break through this confined space? The contract is here. He doesn't want to be killed by Murphys to find out. The only way is to run away with the contract." As for Bart and Elvis, they looked very powerful, but he knew that these two children were not yet the opponents of the Demon King. "You can give it a try. Don't force it. This contract is of great significance. You have to bring the contract to Goddess Athena. Let's leave it to us now, what?" Compared to a person with a mysterious background, I would rather believe in a goddess who is willing to protect the earth and leave with that child. Old Carter straightened the brim of his hat and said seriously. The eyes of Bart and Elvis moved, and both of them heard the latent meaning of Old Carter. After finishing speaking, Old Carter's originally muddy eyes ignited red flames, and just as he was about to release the last strength in his body, a powerful big hand clapped on his shoulder, surging the vast force forced back the remaining strength of Old Carter. Old Carter turned his head unexpectedly and saw Bart's serious face. "Since you're retired, you should stay behind honestly, old cowboy. There are many resting souls in the cemetery. You can't lose the gravekeeper." After finishing speaking, Bart took a few steps forward, and Elvis shrugged at Old Carter. "Old cowboy, let you see the power of the stars." Seeing the two tall, heroic, and fearless figures in front of him, Old Carter glanced blankly, and finally the corner of his mouth twitched. At this moment, he knew that maybe he really should retire. Speechless, "I read these too. Sent them. I was up all night for nothing. Forget it. I don't have to worry about being sick." Chapter 92. Hot Johnny, what a pity, Carter. You made the wrong choice for the second time, because this time, your soul will be tortured for 10,000 years. Rumble, the thunder was loud, and the manic and familiar laughter made Bart's eyes flash sharply, and he said angrily, The premise is that you can do it, Mephisto. His right foot stomped the ground, cracking the ground. With the impact of an explosive air wave, Bart instantly turned into a golden beam and shot towards Mephisto. In the blink of an eye, he rushed to the opponent and punched Mephisto in the latter's contemptuous gaze. Mephisto held out his palm contemptuously to block the blow. In an instant, with the two of them as the center, an extremely terrifying impact wave burst out, and the ground was sunken, with a radius of 1,000 meters. Seeing this, Elvis also yelled angrily, and his figure suddenly disappeared in place as the electric light burst. In the next second, he suddenly appeared behind Mephisto. His body spun suddenly, and a heavy whip kick hit Mephisto's waist. At this critical juncture, Mephisto grabbed Bart's fist with his right hand, burst out with boundless power, and swung it hard. Bang! Bart's body bumped into Elvis suddenly, and the two of them flew backwards with a muffled grunt, but their reaction nerves were extremely terrifying. The moment they flew backwards for a few meters, two golden lights exploded, transforming into dew lasing from both sides to attack Mephisto. Boom, 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 boom. There was a dull, thunderous explosion, and the three of them collided hundreds of times within a second. Every violent impact sent out terrifying ripples. The air shattered waves of air, and the ground shook, become more and more severe with the impact. The waves and the wind howled. The surrounding trees and vegetation were blown and blown away. Fortunately, although the old Carter who watched the battle was old, as the previous generation of Ghost Rider, his physical fitness was not weak, and he would not be affected by the aftermath. But even so, he also felt as if his heart was being squeezed tightly by big hands, creating a sense of suffocation. Old Carter's eyes were full of horror. The fierce battle 727 was beyond his imagination. It's incredible. I didn't expect such a terrifying strong man to appear in the world. It's incredible. No one can understand Mephisto's strength better than old Carter. Otherwise, he wouldn't have escaped by taking the contract of birth to the Vatican, because he was afraid that Mephisto would become stronger if he took the contract, and the world would surely suffer. But now, the performance of Bart and Elvis made him breathe a sigh of relief. At least Mephisto is strong, and someone can stop it. When old Carter was watching the battle, the middle-aged man who had lost consciousness in front of the tombstone in the cemetery and was lying on his Harley locomotive was awakened. Oh, the man covered his forehead and instinctively put his other hand in front of his head to resist the violent gust of wind. With a painful expression on his face, it was obvious that he was feeling very bad now. The man slowly opened his eyes, and the deafening roar in his ears continued to explode, making him instinctively want to scold. But when he opened his eyes, he found that the world in front of him was dark, and as far as he could see, everything was a blur. A standing tombstone. He froze immediately. What is this place? He muttered suspiciously, then turned his head to look at the source of the roaring sound. But seeing the scene in front of him, his eyes shrank suddenly. Walter! The man cried out. What did he see? Is this the end of the world? The dark sky is billowing with black clouds, and the gloomy tones make people feel like they are in the doomsday. Endless thunder is constantly shuttling and intertwining among the black clouds, and under the cover, there are actually two golden figures and one black figure that cannot be seen clearly by the naked eye. Speed crazy collision. Every second of collision, transparent air circles burst out and shattered, obviously because of the silent roar just now. Where am I? What am I doing? What are those three guys? Such a thought came to the man's mind. Shilulu. When the man was dumbfounded and at a loss, there was a mighty hoarse cry next to his ear. He turned his head slightly and saw a pair of eyes and a big hairy head. Hey! The man subconsciously raised his head to say hello. The majestic and mighty Dama seemed very satisfied with the man's politeness and snorted as if in response. This humanized appearance made the man even more puzzled. I must be crazy. The man shook his head and saw the old cowboy standing outside the cemetery watching the battle. Smiley face. In order to understand the doubts in his heart, he struggled to get off his beloved Harley motorcycle against the terrible wind and the dull roar that almost burst his heart, and then suddenly, I found that I didn't know why there was a shovel on my body. He shook his dizzy head, casually inserted the shovel into the ground, and walked out of the cemetery step by step. Staggering and walking in front of old Carter, he waved his hand in front of the old cowboy and said loudly, Hey, buddy, what's the situation now? Old Carter, who was engrossed in watching the battle, immediately looked over when he heard the man's words. Wow, you woke up the child. You seem a bit embarrassed. You're not much better. The man looked at the old cowboy's hand on the round hat to prevent the hat from being blown away, and the white hair dancing wildly, and he couldn't help but secretly slandered. What's the situation now? How did I appear here? The man pointed to the three figures standing in the fierce battle in the distance, and said loudly, "Ah, those are two young saints and a demon king fighting." Old Carter responded loudly, then glanced at the man, his eyes fixed. "Boy, where is the shovel on your body?" "My name is Johnny, not a boy," Johnny replied displeased, and then he paused to see that old Carter's eyes gradually became dangerous. "That shovel is stuck in the side of my car." "Very well, Johnny, my name is Carter, and I'm the cemetery guard here. You drove to my place suddenly and passed out not long ago. The three of them came here not long after, and they beat me for one thing. Get up." Old Carter raised his eyebrows. "Kfa, is that so?" Listening to old Carter's answer, Johnny nodded, then seemed to remember something. His face became pale seeing this bitterness. Old Carter said in confusion, "What's the matter, kid? I seem to have missed an appointment. Is it important?" "Very important." "Then congratulations. You may have really missed it, and our situation is not very good now." "Why?" "Because we must first ensure that we can survive in the future." Old Carter laughed. Johnny was even more depressed and could only sigh. "I'm full of doubts now." "Then I'll tell you after the end, kid. I can see that your life is not satisfactory. Believe me, this is just the beginning." Seeing Johnny's appearance, old Carter frowned. Every generation of Ghost Riders has an unsatisfactory life, and he used to be the same. Johnny didn't say a word, and didn't bother to pay attention to the old cowboy who gloated at his misfortune. His gaze was fixed on the catastrophic scene in the sky ahead. For some reason, he saw a black figure like a demon king. Fragments of memory began to emerge in his mind. In the raging fire, he seemed to see a picture of a strange figure. The hatred and painful emotions kept coming, making his brain seem to explode. Johnny covered his head in pain and kept screaming in a low voice, "Mephisto, kill it, ha!" Amidst the roaring and manic laughter, the fleshy face intertwined with the skull and flashed. "He seems to be going berserk." Seeing this, old Carter frowned and stretched out his hand to pat Johnny's shoulder heavily. A ray of fire exploded in his hand and merged into Johnny's body. Maybe it worked, and the severe pain in Johnny's head gradually disappeared, and he gradually calmed down. Johnny let go of his hands in a daze, stood up straight with his bent body, and looked at his hands. What's wrong with me?" Facing the devil head-on, "Let the vengeful spirit in your body be uncontrollable," old Carter replied. "Spirit of vengeance," Johnny chewed. Old Carter didn't explain, because he paid more attention to the changes in the battle. Boom. In the sky, there was a terrible roar. A huge and dull air wave exploded, and two golden light beams fell from the sky like meteorites, hitting the ground hundreds of meters away from old Carter and Johnny. The ground trembled and the mountains shook, and the crushed stones raged in all directions, accompanied by air waves. Dust, smoke, sand and stones scattered in all directions. Old Carter and Johnny stretched out their hands in front of them, unable to even open their eyes. Fortunately, the violent wind didn't last long. The two felt the wind weakening, and they let go of their hands and looked forward. At this time, the dust and smoke in front of them cleared up. Bart and Elvis were standing on the ground, but the surrounding ground was sunken. One piece, the cracks are densely packed like spider webs. As far as the eye can see, the endless land is already a mess. There are countless large and small deep pits, and the trees and vegetation planted around have already been destroyed by the aftermath. Sure enough, they still can't win. They are still too young. They are still strong, and even talented fighters need time to grow. Old Carter stared at the two slightly bent backs, secretly said. Johnny is now speechless from shock. He didn't know what to say at all. He could only say that a series of recent events had left him overwhelmed. He fainted inexplicably, and all kinds of strange events would happen in the city where he appeared inexplicably. Especially today, I came to the cemetery inexplicably and saw a shocking battle. The protagonists involved are actually the demon lord Mephisto and the Saint Seiya. In front of them, Bart and Elvis's legs were slightly bent, and their chests rose and fell normally, but their breathing had become a little short of breath, which proved that this time was not a battle of great intensity, and even their physical strength was extremely astonishing. Consumed very quickly. How? Elvis reached out and wiped the blood spilling from the corner of his mouth. Hey, I can still fight for a whole day. Bart stood up straight with his burly body, stretched out his big hand and slapped his chest hard twice, His voice was still loud. The two stared at Mephisto floating in mid-air in the distance. Although they could say so, they knew very well in their hearts that they could barely draw with that demon. The most important thing was that the other party was afraid to attack with all his might. The power that caused the three people to collide broke the surrounding blocking barrier. If there is a real fight, it is only a matter of time before they lose. It's just a pity. If you can wear the golden holy clothes, maybe you can really use this opportunity to overwhelm the opponent. Slash, dash slash, asterisk dash slash, asterisk dash slash, asterisk, slash, asterisk, slash. Chapter 93. The Demon King runs away? It's amazing, you brats. Mephisto's figure slowly drifted down. Bart and Elvis's clothes were a little damaged due to the battle, and he was no exception. His old face was scratched a lot, revealing the red devil's skin. This is indeed a genius. Unfortunately, no matter how talented you are, it takes time to grow. You don't have that time anymore. Slightly sharp and hoarse voice, there is a coldness in the voice. Cooperating with the tumbling clouds and black air in the sky, the Demon King's aura has climbed to the peak, and the air is rippling, exuding a suffocating breath. Johnny felt that it was difficult to breathe. Huh, is my knight awake? The devil noticed Johnny, showed an evil smile, and pointed his index finger at old Carter. Take back what I need. Johnny looked dazed. At this moment, a strange consciousness suddenly occupied Johnny's body. Although Johnny was still conscious, he found that he could no longer manipulate his body. Just when Johnny was terrified, he spoke. His voice was low and indifferent. This is your condition? That's right. This is the condition of your deal with me. It's time for you to fulfill your agreement. At the beginning, the devil deceived Johnny and signed a transaction contract, and the content of the contract was that Johnny needed to complete one thing for him. Sure enough, Johnny could not resist the power of the contract at all, and he had run away uncontrollably. I saw wisps of white smoke emitting from Johnny's body, and with a bang, his whole body immediately turned into a skeleton, and his flesh and blood disappeared. The head is burning with the fire of hell. Ghost Rider reappeared. He turned his head, looked at old Carter with those black skull eyes, and said in a low voice, "Hand over what he wants." "I cannot do it." Old Carter was not afraid, but shrugged and refused. Seeing this, Ghost Rider Johnny stretched out his hand that had turned into dry bones towards old Carter, and just as he was about to grab old Carter's neck, there was a whistling in his ear, and the golden air blasted and exploded beside him. A big hand firmly grasped the wrist of Ghost Rider Johnny. The shadow of the burly figure covered Johnny, and the latter turned his head to look, with a gleam of fire in his hollow skull eyes. "You innocent, get out of the way." The short words have already proved the attitude of Ghost Rider Johnny. If it is a sinner, the Ghost Knight will use the eyes of judgment to burn the opponent's soul and expel him to hell. However, the person in front of him is not guilty. The Saint Warrior has never been stained with the blood of innocent people, and has never taken it as his duty to protect the peace of the earth. His soul is full of divine brilliance, holy and clean. Ghost Rider would not take a shot against such a person. However, due to the shackles of the contract, Ghost Rider must complete the content of the contract, and Bart naturally wants to stop it. A ray of golden light flashed in his eyes. He grabbed Johnny's hand and squeezed Johnny with a little force. There was a faint sound of dry bones. Ghost Rider didn't feel pain, and he waited for Bart's answer without changing his expression. "Okay." Bart grinned and was about to stun this guy, but was suddenly stopped by old Carter. "Hey, buddy, I will hand over the contract." Bart turned his head and looked over in confusion, and saw old Carter's slightly meaningful eyes. Bart's eyes moved, and he immediately guessed what old Carter was thinking. Bart pondered for a moment, then let go of his hand. For a while, the atmosphere immediately became quiet. Old Carter smiled. In the eyes of everyone, he walked into the cemetery, came to the Johnny Harley motorcycle, and pulled out the shovel stuck in the ground. Then with a little force, the top handle was twisted off, and a piece of rolled parchment was taken out from the handle. Seeing this parchment, Mephisto in the distance immediately smiled. There are thousands of hateful and evil special souls in the contract of Saint Van Gonzale. When he gets these souls, his own strength will also be greatly improved. Old Carter came out and handed the scroll to Ghost Rider Johnny. Johnny held the contract of Saint Van Gonzales in his hand. At this moment, Johnny suddenly found that he seemed to be able to control his own body. The original strange consciousness seemed to hide back for some reason. Johnny looked down at the contract in his hand. At this time, Mephisto has already begun to urge. "Knight, hand over the contract of Saint Van Gonzale to me." Although Johnny didn't understand a lot, he was not stupid. He understood that the contract he had signed with the Demon King had already been fulfilled. He took 2 steps forward, pointed his bony index finger at Mephisto and said hoarsely, "Our contract is over. Go back to your hell, demon." It was only at this time that Mephisto realized that there were loopholes in his previous words. He asked the knight to take back the contract, but he didn't tell the knight to give the contract of St. Van Gunza to him. Mephisto's face immediately became gloomy. "You have made me very angry. Since you don't call out, I can take back whoever killed you." Rumble, the terrifying aura raged across the sky, and the turbulent wave-like pressure pressed heavily on everyone. The black frenzy covered the entire earth in an instant, and it seemed to be able to see each one struggling, wailing, and screaming from the black frenzy. Undead. Take a look, as if the soul is going to be swallowed. This is not good. Old Carter took off his cowboy hat, patted the dust on it, and was about to whistle to call the old man to fight for his life. Just at the most dangerous time, I saw the sky and the earth, as if they were exquisite. The stars above the dark night sky were shining brightly, and the golden waves that emerged out of thin air turned into torrents to wash away all evil and darkness, and the light sprinkled on the earth, dissipating the night. There seemed to be sonorous and unyielding shouts coming from my ears, as if brave and fearless soldiers were watching here. The darkness was swept away, and this sudden change immediately changed everyone's expressions. Rumble, everyone, including Mephisto, suddenly raised their heads to look at the sky, and saw the galaxy rolling back into the sky. Under the galaxy, a figure appeared inexplicably, overlooking all of them with a pair of indifferent eyes. Wearing black and gold noble clothing, the golden hair under the hood is draped on the shoulder blades, and there is a gold necklace on the neck, mysterious and great. The holy, mighty aura drove away all the black air around. Smiley face. Even in the black frenzy emanating from Mephisto, the struggling undead seemed to be trembling in fear, not daring to scream, and not even daring to look up at the stalwart figure. Old Carter opened his eyes wide, looking shocked. This is another extremely powerful existence. No, it should be said that this is a divine residence that is even stronger than the Demon King Mephisto. However, how could there be another powerful divine mansion in this world? After Athena, will there be more residences in the future? Didn't it mean that the incident in the ancient times caused all the gods to leave the earth and go to another dimension? Where did these gods come from? Johnny the Ghost Rider raised his head, and the expression on the skeleton face could not be seen at all, but the burning on his head kept swaying, which also proved that his mood was not stable at this time. Of course, the most appalling of all was Mephisto himself. Gold Saint Seiya? Are you a Gold Saint Seiya? Mephisto completely lost expression management. With a distorted look, his gaffe was not a disguise. The majestic and powerful aura on the opponent is not inferior to him at all, no, or it should be far superior to him, especially the familiar aura on the opponent, which makes him know the identity of the opponent immediately. Originally, he thought that the goddess had killed all the saint fighters under her command because of the battlefield of the ancient gods. It was not until now that she woke up that she chose to train new saint fighters among humans. The 2 little devils in front of him were like this, but he never thought that there would be a powerful Saint Seiya when Athena sat down. Judging from the aura that does not belong to this era on the other party, it must be a certain golden saint from the past. Mephisto was thinking a lot. It's numb. There are strong men under Athena's subordinates, and he is no longer the strongest existence under Athena's command. The most important thing is, since there is a golden saint of all ages, is there a second one? The third? Even more? Thinking of this, Mephisto couldn't help but feel cold inside. Fortunately, I have already made up my mind to surrender to that goddess. If I am a little careful, I am afraid that I will be finished if I send out a golden saint at random. Sure enough, the goddess is not called the goddess of wisdom for nothing. Everything I do, I'm afraid it's all under the gaze of the other party. Mephisto's little bit of careful thought was completely erased at this moment, and it really was enough to just submit obediently. Your Pope is different from Mephisto's complicated thoughts. Bard and Elvis smiled at this time. Sure enough, nothing that happened on the earth could escape the eyes of the Pope. After all, at least a saint with the 7th sense has enough spiritual power to cover the earth. Any sign of trouble will be watched. Kyle stands high in the sky. His beautiful face under the brim is as cold as frost, and his cold and ruthless voice echoes in the sky and the earth. Go back to your hell. As soon as the voice fell, Kyle did not see any movement. The entire world was distorted immediately, and the world was enveloped by a vast and majestic force which collapsed and squeezed layer by layer. The world seemed to suddenly change into a Milky Way, and the stars shone with incomparable mighty power, waiting to erupt at any time. Sensing death, Mephisto did not hesitate. He raised his arm in an instant, tore open the space in front of him, and saw a crack appear in front of him. Everyone could see that the other end of the crack was the boundless world of blood-colored purgatory, filled with hellfire, causing the space to be distorted and blurred. Countless undead and demons are looking up, and those cold eyes make people feel hairy. But now, these cold eyes have turned into fear, obviously feeling the monstrous power erupted by Pope Kyle on the crack side. At the last moment when the human world collapsed, Mephisto didn't even reply, and instantly sank into the crack. Rumble, the billowing torrent reverberated the heaven and earth, and the earth trembled. It didn't last long before the heaven and earth returned to calm, and the galaxy dissipated, revealing the original appearance of this heaven and earth. The sun is shining, and the fresh air is refreshing. Only because of the fighting, the chirping of those insects and birds was missing. Of course, no one present would care about that. Seeing that the Demon King was expelled, old Carter was relieved at this moment, but Johnny's inconceivable cry came from his ears. The devil has escaped? And 94th. Chapter 94. Soul of Liberation. When daylight came, Ghost Rider's state had already been withdrawn. Ghost Rider is a judgment knight who travels through the night. When the night comes, he will turn into a skeleton knight riding a motorcycle, waving chains, wandering around the city with manic laughter, and judging evil. Johnny reverted to human form. It's just that he is full of disbelief now. Originally thought that today was enough for him to be surprised, but he didn't expect that everything that happened next would only make him even more unexpected. Even the Demon King Mephisto, who was as strong as the Lord of Hell, ran away in desperation, which is really unheard of. Johnny could even feel the strange consciousness in his body, sending joy. Apparently, the vengeful spirit was very happy with the devil's embarrassed appearance. It's just that no one pays attention to 727 Johnny these days. Whooshed, a golden light flashed in the sky, and in the blink of an eye, Kyle's figure appeared in front of the four of them. The terrifying speed made old Carter tremble in his heart. Fortunately, this person is not an enemy, otherwise with this speed, no one can be his opponent. My Lord Pope, Bart and Elvis put their right hands on their left chest. Kyle nodded, and his red lips moved slightly. Not bad, but still a little weak. Kyle's outspokenness, Bart and Elvis didn't change their expressions. It didn't matter anymore. They were making rapid progress. Basically, they were still blasted by the Pope, and then left such a sentence. They have long been used to it. The two of them had already secretly vowed in their hearts that when they became stronger, they must make the Pope change his words. The old cowboy took off his cowboy hat, put it on his chest, and bowed slightly to show respect. Thank you very much for your help, His Excellency the Pope. Seeing this, Johnny hurriedly did the same. Kyle glanced at the two of them and nodded. Unyielding soul, you all have great qualities. Thank you very much for your praise, but unfortunately I am already old, the old cowboy said with a smile. You deserve to enjoy your retirement. It's a pity, but that one won't let me go. Because of my appearance, he won't come to Earth anymore. Kyle shook his head. If it wasn't for Bart and Elvis, I would break into and kill him myself. The calm words contained terrifying killing intent, which shocked old Carter and Johnny. Although they lost their voices, the two of them didn't know what to say. As for bragging, obviously, it is completely impossible. They have seen this powerful gold saint with their own eyes. It is suspected that the previous generation, or even an even older generation, has survived the Golden Saint. If she wants to, she may really be able to break into and kill Mephisto. They don't doubt it. I can only sigh with admiration for this pattern. The majestic Devil King is actually just a stepping stone for this new generation of saint fighters to hone. Hey, don't worry, my Lord Pope. It won't be long before we break through to the seventh sense, and then I will crush his bones one by one with my own hands. Bart grinned. Elvis was not to be outdone. Bart, he is my target. For this reason, the two actually quarreled over who would personally kill the Demon King in the future. Kyle didn't stop the noisy scene. Motivation is one of the greatest nutrients for people to improve, so she set a goal specifically. A goal for all saints to strive for. Old Carter is smiling. He feels very relaxed now. The mountain that was pressing on his heart is now like a fragile bubble that will burst at any time. He is happy in his heart, and he is ready to have a good time with the old man tonight. Just have a drink. At this time, he seemed to think of something, took the parchment from Johnny, spread it in front of Kyle, and said in a deep voice, "My lord, this contract to give birth to the Vatican has a different meaning to Mephisto. If he gets this contract, his power will become even stronger." From the fallen souls 150 years ago, Kyle could see through the struggling and painful souls in the contract at a glance. She reached out and grabbed the rolled sheepskin roll, revealing her white wrist and the bracelet wrapped around her wrist. Use a little force. Boom. Under the heavy pressure, the parchment was crushed by Kyle. In an instant, the sky seemed to turn black again. As the black mist burst out from the parchment, one by one the souls imprisoned in the contract were released. Come out, hide in the black mist, cheering and raging. Distorted and evil faces of the dead reappeared in the world one by one. More than 1,000 evil and depraved souls want to turn this place into their own world, an evil and depraved domain. The majestic evil aura frightens people. Even the old Carter didn't expect the Pope to be so tough, but before he had time to worry, he saw Kyle reach out and clench his fist at the raging souls wandering in the sky. Rumble. In an instant, it was as if the galaxy exploded, and the terrifying golden ripples washed away everything like a torrent. More than 1,000 fallen souls in the black mist are howling in the sacred golden galaxy. Visible to the naked eye, each soul seems to be washed by the divine power, and the souls intertwined with evil, darkness, and corruption are gradually becoming clear, transparent. The originally painfully distorted face gradually calmed down. In the end, under the amazed eyes of old Carter and Johnny, the sinking souls had washed everything away, and more than 1,000 souls bowed to Kyle with grateful faces, and finally turned into bunches of particles like cherry blossoms. Usually, the last beauty that belongs to them blooms. They are finally relieved. Old Carter sighed. His eyes seemed to be slightly moist at 5.0. He had personally experienced it 150 years ago, so he naturally knew exactly what was going on with the contract from the Vatican, and why the 1,000-odd villages in the originally peaceful and harmonious village had fallen and degenerated. He also wanted to free these souls, but unfortunately he couldn't do it. The power of the contract was too powerful, and he didn't have that ability at all. Old Carter could only take this contract and hide in hiding, avoiding the eyes of the demon king Mephisto. Now, the liberation of these souls is also his liberation. At this time, the sun was shining on everyone, and old Carter slightly raised his head and closed his eyes. This time, he could really enjoy his last time. Chapter 95. The power to change the world. The morning sun shines across the earth. Under the trees not far from the cemetery, Johnny and the old cowboy witnessed Pope Kyle and the two saints turning into beams of light and teleporting away. The dazzling scene made Johnny show an envious expression. In the past, he used to think that breaking the limit of the speeding car would make him feel exciting, but after today, there are many more exciting things. However, there are still many things in his future life, and there are still things that need to be resolved, such as his love, such as the spirit of revenge in his body. Boy, you are lucky. Why? Because you met the real God's residence. You have to be thankful. She is kind, old Carter said meaningfully. God, in many stories, plays a positive role, but the reality is that most of the gods are selfish people, full of conspiracy and calculation. His life back then was not like this. Legends are always just legends. Legends can be changed artificially, and so can images. When the devil is doing whatever he wants in the world, he is just an effort. He is not controlled, and there is no so-called to save him and destroy the devil. But this generation of knights is different. The coming of Athena, as well as her actions, she may have her own calculations, but she will not set her sights on humans. She will not wantonly plunder human souls. She will take away human beliefs, and she will protect human beings. In front of her, the demon king is like a weak creature that can only curl up in and cannot manipulate Johnny. Johnny will have more of his own life in the future. The power of the spirit of vengeance is too powerful and special. No one wants to have it. The devil is like this, and so are the angels in the so-called heaven. Johnny half understood and looked at old Carter thoughtfully. You seem to have something to say to me. The spirit of vengeance 16 in your body is a very powerful and special thing, but it is violent. When it is fully released, it will destroy the surface of this planet forever. Do you have someone you love? Old Carter looked at the sky and asked back. I have, and I love her deeply. Smiley face. Johnny replied without hesitation as a beautiful face seemed to appear in front of his eyes. That's good. Love is a very great thing. It is the most special and strongest force in the universe. Anyone who dares to sell their soul for love has the power to change the world. Old Carter put on his cowboy hat and turned around, walking towards the house in the distance. My child, try to control your power. Don't be swayed by hatred and curses, so you can have your own love. When you really understand it, you will have more power than Ghost Rider. Johnny turned around and stared at the back of the old cowboy, as if thinking about what he said, and finally raised his mouth. You should speak more clearly, old cowboy. Aha, I'm so inscrutable when I don't know what to say, don't I? How about an early morning beer? The old cowboy waved his hands without looking back. Save it for next time. I missed a date and I need to explain to someone I love. Rumble. A minute later, with the roar of the engine, Harley Knight embarked on his own life path, a new and different path. In front of the house not far from the cemetery, old Carter stood at the door, holding a bottle of beer, looking at the knight who disappeared at the end of the earth, shrugged. I hope you can get rid of that contract, Ghost Rider. Mimi drank a sip of beer, and then saw the devastated and broken land that was now restored to its original state. Old Carter pursed his lips and expressed his praise. He is really a kind person. He saved a lot of money and went to enjoy his last life. Goddess Athena, I praise you. Well, it's best to kill Mephisto. The old cowboy babbled and turned back to the house. Sheila. Not far away. Ma Pengzhong heard the chirping sound of the old man responding. What the hell? Why do all kinds of monsters always appear on this earth? Is this the legendary Lord of Hell? I can't think of any technology to deal with it. Fortunately, the saints solved him. In a luxury suite in a hotel in Mumbai, Tony got up early in the morning, eating a clean and hygienic breakfast and chattering. On the table, there was a satellite surveillance video that had already been played. The last frame of the picture was a dark cloud blocking the view. Under the dark cloud, a looming and terrifying figure stood in the sky, and on the opposite side were two tall and burly teenagers. The high-definition picture is like the highest-definition picture. After shrinking, when he saw the red skin exposed under Mephisto's damaged face, Tony felt that he had a bad appetite, let alone eat. He could only throw away the food in his hand and take a sip of the good wine that was poured next to him. At this time, there was a knock on the door outside the suite, and before Tony could speak, he saw two people walking in, wearing traditional women's and men's clothing from Mumbai, which was actually a piece of exquisite long cloth wrapped around their bodies, and from shoulders thrown back. Wearing it on the bodies of two obviously foreigners has a certain flavor, especially the beautiful and charming Natasha, who is even more charming after wearing it. Seeing two teammates coming in like this, Tony spread his hands in displeasure. Hey, although we are teammates, we should respect each other's privacy. You just barge in like this, in case I don't wear anything. Isn't that embarrassing? Yes, I'm sorry, Tony. I will respect your privacy in the future. Hawkeye Clinton apologized completely insincerely, then walked to the windowsill, looked around vigilantly a few times, then turned around and nodded to Natasha. Natasha nodded slightly in response and sat opposite Tony, ignoring a pile of clean and hygienic local breakfasts on the table, glanced at the tablet and the frozen picture. Her red lips parted slightly. A slightly female hoarse voice came. How do you feel? It doesn't feel right to me, because that thing is simply not something we can deal with. Tony leaned lazily on the chair, tilting his head. Anyway, it's just an open look. That is the devil, Mephisto, the existence that rules hell, and a terrifying legendary creature that can destroy the earth. Just such a horrible guy. How does it feel? Even if he recruited the genius scientist Bruce Banner and transformed into a grumpy green fat man, there was absolutely no chance of winning. Basically, meeting will be seconds. He had already used Jarvis to roughly calculate the strength of the opponent. Each punch was at least 100,000 tons, and the upper limit could not be detected. With any punch, the MK armor he created would be scrapped in an instant. Not to mention that the opponent still focuses on the energy nature of the mysterious side. It is not a level of existence at all. You know I'm not asking that. Natasha glanced at Tony with her charming eyes and stretched out her hand to hold the tablet. On a dark night, on a deserted road, a flaming skeleton wearing a black leather armor with chains was riding a dazzling car. The cool-looking Ghostface Harley motorcycle is galloping. Along the way, left a long line of fire. Clatter, clatter. Natasha tapped the tablet with her index finger and raised her beautiful thin eyebrows. Tony shrugged slightly. Johnny Blazer, I found his information. It's very interesting. His transformation seems to be out of his control at all. His ability is very good, very suitable for the Avengers. However, you don't know what he did before, do you?" Tony looked at the charming and capable agent in front of him mockingly. As early as some time ago, this knight did a lot of things in many cities in Texas. Many people died, and the way of death was very strange. His eyes were as black as briquettes. The cause of death was unknown. Except for the eyeballs, even after the autopsy, none of the brain nerves were damaged. They just stopped functioning after normal death. In addition to the information of each deceased, basically all the knights found were criminals, and everyone had a murder case. It is not difficult to conclude that this knight has a certain ability to see whether people have committed crimes, especially find criminals to give some kind of ceremonial trial. Natasha and Hawkeye Clinton are both SHIELD agents. For so many years, Tony would not believe that they had never killed anyone. Whether there are innocent people among them, not to mention, for the agents, there are only targets with different positions, and all innocent people can only be known in the SHIELD database. And even Tony himself had developed the military industry before and sold it to the U.S. military. How few people are killed by the U.S. using weapons every year? In fact, he killed countless people indirectly. To attract such an uncertain factor, the other party probably saw the three people, and first went straight to 727 to run away and transform to judge them. Tony didn't have the slightest bit of confidence in that. This is enough. The Earth needs a powerful avenger. My task is to recruit such a person. As long as he is strong enough, I will test him. Natasha didn't change her face. Wow, this is what makes me feel boring. Tony said so, but there was a hint of admiration and distrust in his eyes. Appreciate the other party for sacrificing their lives in order to complete the task, but distrust is also based on this. When he joins the Avengers, he needs to be centered on the will of the Avengers, not for the order of a bald man. But he didn't mention it. He needs to use SHIELD to get along with each other later. If he is sure that Natasha and that eagle-eyed Clinton are indeed still performing missions for SHIELD, then he will kick them out without hesitation. The Avengers. In his team, there is no need for dead soldiers and tools. Okay, put that skeleton knight down for now. Have you found that Bruce Banner? He has always been under our sight to prevent him from hurting others. Natasha nodded. Tonight, I will have someone take him to a remote place for a meeting. This is the best execution plan for the irritable Hulk. Even if the negotiation fails in the end, he can leave at any time, or restrain the other party. But Natasha's plan, Tony objected. You will only make him distrust you. He's always been on high alert, wary of anybody. You lied to him first and then you're talking to him about things? Believe me, the most likely thing he's going to do is yell at us and tell us to off. Although Tony has a rebellious personality and is arrogant, it doesn't mean that he doesn't know human nature. It's just because of his identity as a rich man and a genius that he develops an arrogant character and is self-centered. He upholds respect for the equally talented Bruce Banner and his status as a future teammate. Natasha obviously acted like an agent, which made him very disliked. Natasha and Clinton were taken aback for a moment. The former glanced at Tony thoughtfully and nodded. Maybe you are right. So what should we do? Go see him. Percent. Chapter 96. The Fifth Avenger. Let's meet him for a cup of coffee. Tony stood up, walked towards the room, took 2 steps, then seemed to realize something, turned his head, took a look, stretched out his fingers and turned around. It's worth mentioning that the two of you are wearing that thing called clothes. Shouldn't you need to wear it? Natasha's little goodwill that had just risen in her heart disappeared immediately, and she threw Tony's beautiful eyes. In the evening, night fell. Mumbai brings together characters and cultures from various religions and cultures, and has given birth to a fascinating nightlife. After nightfall, Karaba is a feast for the eyes, and the old antique shops in the dark alleys are full of rare treasures that were scattered after the decline of the royal family in the 18th century. There are luxury hotels and poor slums. This is the city with the most contradictory classes in the world, and also the most populous city. In Mumbai at night, in the center of the city, the lights are feasting. The lights of luxury hotels and restaurants illuminate the relatively clean roads, and the rich and wealthy of the high caste are well-dressed and travel in luxury cars. In the slums, there are dirty and muddy roads, decades-old houses on both sides, and even thatched cottages. Men, women, and children are wearing old rags wrapped around their bodies, and people come and go busy with this night's work. There are also groups of children laughing and playing. There is a unique style of the lower class, and in one of the wooden houses on the outskirts of this slum, 2 bare bulbs were lit on the ceiling, emitting a dim yellow light that was not considered bright. In the dilapidated and dirty house, Bruce Banner, who was wearing an ordinary gray-blue shirt, put down the medical kit in his hand and washed his hands on the rusty iron basin on the wooden platform. Although he is living in poverty now, the noise here does not bring him any pressure. On the contrary, it is the peace that he has not had for a long time. He enjoyed this unique tranquility very much. Dr. Banner, who had been busy all afternoon, was preparing to make today's dinner. There was a polite knock on the door, and Dr. Banner turned around and shouted in his not so proficient Hindi, "Please come in." Following the sound of several footsteps, Dr. Banner saw 3 people walking in. When the appearance of one of them was clearly seen through the light, his originally smiling face immediately became calm. "I thought that one day someone would come to me, and even thought that the army would send soldiers, tanks, and helicopters here, but I never thought that Tony Stark would appear in front of me." As he said, he turned and walked from the side on the wooden shelf. There was a red thermos bottle, and he poured himself a cup of hot water. He picked it up and took a sip before looking at Tony, Natasha, and Clinton. His eyes paused for a moment on the exquisite clothes wrapped around the 3 of them, especially when Tony was still wearing a suit. He paused and continued, said, "What made you come to this impoverished place? If it's a blood draw, you should put on your armor first." Dr. Banner was pointing, obviously aware of what had happened to Tony in the last few days. The slightly hostile words did not make Tony feel angry, but he took a look at the house and shrugged his shoulders. "I have to say, sometimes living in such a house for a period of time may give me another feeling. Inspiration," he said in general, but suddenly found a mouse scurrying by, and immediately changed his words. "Wow, the premise is that there are no such children." Dr. Banner looked at Tony talking nonsense. That look made Tony immediately stretch out his hand and make a classic breast milk gesture. "Okay, let's get back to business." He glanced at the long table and the chairs placed next to him, walked a few steps and sat on one of the chairs, raised his head slightly and looked at Dr. Banner. "I want to form a special response team. You are invited to join, Dr. Banner." Natasha and Clinton followed Tony in 2 of the chairs. This big beauty and tough, handsome guy are members of this team, 2 murderous agents. Tony pointed to Natasha and Clinton. Natasha unconsciously gave another look at the guy who secretly satirized her. Dr. Banner walked slowly to the other side of the table and sat down. He put the steaming teacup on the table, looked Tony in the eyes, and said in a deep voice, "I'm not interested in your proposal. If you can come to me, you should know what state I am in now." Smiley face. "The other one will rage at me anytime and anywhere, and it will tear you apart." The voice gradually became indifferent. While speaking, the original voice turned into an angry voice, and the pupils changed back and forth between light brown and green. A violent beast breath that seemed to come from the wild era spread from his body. This breath made Natasha and Clinton vigilant instinctively. They subconsciously touched their weapons, but they found nothing. At this time, they had already reacted. Under Tony's strong request, the 2 did not carry any weapons. As for Tony, who was facing this aura, his heart was tense, but he still forcibly calmed down, looked directly into Dr. Banner's eyes and said softly, "We need you and the other you. In addition, joining the Avengers, Ross has no authority to hunt you down. We are free." The green pupils stared at Tony and the other party's sincere expression. After an unknown amount of time, Banner opened his mouth slowly. "Then you better hope I don't get angry. Dr. Bruce Banner is recruited, and the 5th member of the Avengers is in place." And on the plane back to the temporary Avengers headquarters, Zhao, which is Tony's villa in New York that he doesn't often live in, Tony showed Dr. Bruce Banner a lot of confidential documents and information that he couldn't touch. When he saw the shocking truth of the world inside, Dr. Banner also knew the cruelty of the world. No wonder Tony couldn't wait to recruit himself. On the private plane, Dr. Banner sat on the sofa, with a dry smile, and looked at Tony in front of him. Are we all facing incidents of this level? Although he knows the strength of his other self, it doesn't mean he is completely invincible. If he was facing creatures from myths and legends, Banner believed that there was a high probability that he would be the one who was crushed. Of course it's impossible. Tony stared at Dr. Banner with a foolish look. "Thank you for your support." Chapter 97. Hell and Heaven. Tony casually placed the coffee he made himself in front of Dr. Banner, completing what he had said to Natasha. "Although I don't want to admit it, so far, the Avengers are completely incapable of dealing with enemies of that level. Also, those guys' emphasis on energy has surpassed the level that our modern known technology can achieve." Tony took a sip of whiskey. He was a genius, not an all-knowing god. His ability to create equipment that surpasses modern technology is also based on the advanced technology left by his father Howard. He cannot imagine a technology that surpasses modern technology out of thin air, and then create it. Even this technology needs to resist a powerful energy that can destroy a planet. He needs more inspiration and basic techniques of technology. As one of the most knowledgeable scientists in the scientific community, Dr. Banner understands this very well. Science itself is extremely risky and unstable. He himself is the biggest example. He created an uncontrollable monstrosity. However, what is ridiculous now is that he was hunted down by the army because of the monster, and he didn't know how many innocent casualties and damages he caused indirectly. Because of this monster, he was recruited to a so-called team to solve supernatural crises and save lives. Dr. Banner put down the tablet, took a sip of the iced coffee, and the cold and bitter taste cheered him up a little. Fortunately, someone will solve such an existence. There are so many unbelievably powerful monsters and demons emerging one after another. If it weren't for the goddess Athena and the chosen saints, perhaps humans are already desperate now. It's not an exaggeration to say it's the end. Dr. Banner is in a good mood now. He has been through bad situations anyway. So, where do we go next? Let's go see the old guy who is said to have just woken up. Tony looked out the window of the plane, and the moon that seemed to be very close. TSK. It turned out to be an old guy. The 727 can make you fight so hard. As expected, the legendary is very scary. The next day, Sol in the Sanctuary learned from Bart and Elvis that after learning about the contract between Mephisto and the Raw Vatican, he couldn't help showing a surprised expression. He is very clear about the strength of Bart and Elvis. But it was such a fighter who almost suffered a fiasco in the face of that guy named Mephisto. This surprised Sol and made his heart even hotter. He also wanted to see such a super strong person. Bart's upper body was bare, revealing a nearly exploding broad body and muscles. He was doing push-ups with one finger on the difficult marble floor, and sweat was dripping from his forehead. On his back was a huge black boulder with a diameter of more than 100 meters and a strange shape. This boulder is a star core that died of Hengxin in the universe, and the weight of this one piece has reached an astonishing over 1 million tons, which shows its density. And Popcal also engraved a mark of divine power on it, and the weight will gradually increase over time. Not only Bart, but other saints also have such star cores for training. But most of the other people don't like this kind of exercise, and they are more willing to find a place with harsh environment but suitable for them to practice. Only Bart and Santos of Ursa Major advocated the primitive cultivation method of the body. So why among all people, Bart has the closest relationship with Santos and Sol? Ha ha ha, not far away, Santos, who was also exercising in this way, kept panting heavily and said while exercising, "It was that guy who brought us a lot of shame." The rough and resolute face seemed to become sharp because of the memory of the evil face. Ha ha ha, Bifa, I want to see and see more. Sol held up a star core and stood up suddenly, then squatted down, back and forth. Drops of sweat kept dripping, and the blonde hair had become sticky wet, full of testosterone. If there was a woman here, she would probably pass out because she was too unbearable to bear the visual impact. Ha, then you may lose miserably. According to the Pope, Mephisto and your father are on the same level, which is what you call the Heavenly Father. Hey, no matter what kind of enemy a real warrior faces, he will never feel afraid. It is the highest glory of Asgard to die on the battlefield. His Excellency the Pope left him, just to let us wash away the shame. When I reach the seventh sense, I will put on the golden holy clothes, break into hell, cut off his head with my own hands, and put it in my Taurus palace as a treasure. Trophy. Bart lowered his head and growled dully. Of course, my brother, 1,000 years ago, I did the same when I faced a powerful opponent, and I also placed a lot of spoils in my palace. That's what a soldier does. Sol laughed boldly. I like your Asgard style, but your brother Loki is an exception. When I saw him for the first time, my sixth sense told me that he is quite disgusting, full of resentment and conspiracy. Bart straightened his body, turned his head to look at Sol, who was squatting crazily not far away. Compared to Thor, he doesn't like Loki. The superhuman senses of the saints endow them with the ability to point directly to the essence through phenomena. Loki's pretense might be able to fool the single-minded people of Asgard, but not them. In Bart's eyes, Loki is simply a scum to the bone, even thinking of playing a conspiracy to kill Thor through the saints. Fortunately, later on, for some unknown reason, Loki's whole person changed drastically. The darkness in his heart was swept away, and his personality changed. From a scumbag to a smart bitch. That's why Loki was able to come to Sanctuary, otherwise Sanctuary really thought that anyone could come. The dozens of barriers laid down by the sanctuary, in addition to isolating the inside from the outside and defending against enemies, can also sense the darkness in people's hearts. Even if he is given permission, Loki is still a bad guy, so it is still impossible to enter the sanctuary. After the conversation between the father and son, Sol also knew that Loki had changed from the past to the present, so he quickly defended his beloved brother. In the past, he was like that because of a misunderstanding. Now that the misunderstanding is resolved, Loki will be a real fighter. I believe you, Sol. Bart didn't explain too much, but changed the subject. Your brother left? Heimdall seems to have noticed that there seems to be a conspiracy against Asgard outside the Nine Realms, and Loki has been ordered by his father to investigate. A conspiracy? Then you are still here to exercise with us so calmly? Santos heard it not far away, and said unexpectedly, "Haha, for thousands of years, ever since Asgard became the ruler of the Nine Realms, conspiracies and wars have become commonplace." Sol looked unconcerned. Bart and Santos nodded. The real ruler has never been confused by conspiracy and war. This may be called pride and arrogance, but also why is it not self-confidence? By the way, you Asgard seem to know something about Mephisto? Facing Bart's question, Sol pondered for a moment and said with a look of recollection, "I remember my mother once told me, but I don't remember much when I was restless. Just know that is a very old dimensional world, and it has an opposite called heaven." Heaven? Santos's Bart's body shook violently and even stopped exercising. The two simply stood up and lifted the 100-meter star core boulder with one hand and threw it aside. Rumbling, there were two dull sounds and vibrations, and a piece of marble shattered. Sol didn't expect Bart and Santos to react so strongly to a name. Seeing that their expressions seemed a little wrong, he simply gave up the exercise and put the star core aside. After wiping the sweat off his head, he asked doubtfully, "You seem surprised?" After speaking, he seemed to realize something. "By the way, your world has records of many myths, and there should be many records of heaven. Indeed, according to the records of our world's Bible, heaven is the kingdom of God where angels live, and God is the ruler of angels. He is a creator god. According to legend, he created the world." Bart and Santos looked at each other, brows slightly wrinkled. He created the world? Sol couldn't help laughing as if he wanted to hear some joke, and waved his hands with a look of disdain. "I don't know how this is recorded. It is probably made by angel believers." Then he hesitated for a while and said, "It seems that outside the universe, there is really an extremely great who seems to be God. His legend and strength are all unknown, but that God is completely different from the one in heaven." He simply said everything he knew. The God in your mouth should refer to the great existence, and the creation of the world in heaven is pure nonsense. You should be clear, including the earth, the 9 kingdoms ruled by Asgard, relying on the world tree, but in fact relying on the world tree there is another kingdom, which is heaven. As you say, heaven is the kingdom of angels, but I don't remember how many years ago, the leader of heaven angered my father, Odin, because of something, and Odin cut off the world in a rage. The tree's connection to heaven exiles heaven. My father likes heaven very much. I remember he once said that heaven is full of conspiracy and interests, deceit and selfishness. Under the bright and beautiful appearance, it is full of filth and filth. So it's like this. Bart thoughtfully received the message. He remembered that in the Texas cemetery, they had communicated with the previous generation of Ghost Rider Old Carter. The spirit of vengeance was a very special existence, which was itself created by a series of conspiracies. Originally, the earliest duty of Ghost Rider was to protect human beings. Originally, the flames on his body were blue instead of red, but conspiracy and depravity made Ghost Rider change from guardianship to punishment and judgment. Among them, there must be many unknown secrets, including in heaven. At first, I thought that only was involved, but I didn't expect that there is also a heaven. This matter must be reported to the Pope, Bart said in a deep voice, and immediately walked towards the Pope's palace in a hurry, totally disregarding exercise. The Sol and Santos looked at each other and hurriedly followed. Pope's palace. Kyle, who was wearing the Pope's uniform, looked at the 3 Barts in front of her and listened to Bart's report. She tapped her clean chin lightly. Hell and heaven seem to be opposites, darkness and light, evil and justice, but after all the essence same. Heaven has been watching the world, and they are already ready to move. Chapter 98. A battle that will soon affect the world, you mean? Heaven will intervene in the world next? Bart frowned. Kyle nodded, and walked towards the palace gate with graceful steps. The three of Bart followed behind, and the light shone on the four of them. Kyle raised his head and looked up at the sky. Under the brim of his hat, those sharp eyes seemed to see through the vast universe, the world full of light and sacredness, and the hearts that were unwilling to be lonely. Heaven is not as beautiful as humans imagined. It has never been above board. Just like among humans, those people also have their own right struggles. Because of a media and conspiracy, a battle is about to spread to the world. As she possesses the will of the supreme gods, she has long been able to notice the existence of human beings from other dimensions one by one. She can also predict a major event that will happen in the future. Now, because of her existence, unpredictable changes have taken place in the future. This may be unpredictable for some powerful gods such as Ancient One and Odin, but it has never deviated from Kyle's vision. Talking about it, no matter what happened to the outside world, she and Shengyu are still growing with firm steps. The other so-called big events are just the experience of cultivating saint fighters. Smiley face. This time, no exception. She didn't go into great detail directly, but just concealed part of the truth. Let Bart and the others experience the rest by themselves. These are the nourishment on the growth path of everyone and are indispensable. As she thought, Bart, Santos was serious. The two of them were thinking a lot, pondering over the meaning of the Pope's words. Bart frowned. My lord, what should we do? Wait. Next, you will need to face this catastrophe. Bart and Santos looked at each other, while Saul was thoughtful. And at an angle that the three of them couldn't see, the corner of Kyle's mouth curled up a little. Heaven, hell, and archangels are another feast. But she wants to see what kind of expressions those so-called angels, God, will have when they see the world that has been turned upside down. Both regard the world and the earth as the back garden. But when they were fighting, they didn't even know that their back garden had been snatched away by themselves. Time passed so peacefully for a while. At this time, the earth has ushered in winter. A slightly remote detached apartment in a city in Texas. It's more like an apartment than a small private repair shop. The first floor is for repairing locomotives, and the second floor is where you live. As the owner of the apartment, Johnny Blair was not in a high mood at this time. In the spacious and tidy living room, Johnny saw a few people, and some guys who claimed to be the Avengers wanted to invite him to join them. Staring at Tony's familiar face, he finally turned slightly to look at another handsome and resolute face. The familiar face reminded him of the most famous soldier in history, Steve Rogers, the first superhero in American history. Unexpectedly, decades later, this person would actually appear in front of him. It's incredible, but after going through so much, Johnny will not make any waves about this kind of thing. He leaned lazily on the back of the sofa, put his feet on the low table in front of him, and said impatiently, I repeat, I don't want to join your Avengers. With that free time, I'd rather take Roxy to Rockport by bike to eat seafood dishes. Besides, Rosie is coming back soon. As a reporter, I think she might pester you to report on you. After speaking, he stretched out his finger and pointed to Steve Rogers. The world is never safe, Mr. Blazer, every day at any time. Anywhere, there is a possibility of a catastrophic event that can ruin your date, and, if you don't want to, why turn into that Ghost Rider every night in Texas punish criminals in the territory? During this period of time, you have killed a total of 130 people. Do you think you will be able to live in peace in the future? Tony hit the nail on the head, causing Johnny to frown slightly. During this period of time, during his communication with Old Carter, he had been learning how to suppress the consciousness of the violent, vengeful spirit in his body, but there were still times when he couldn't control it. Transform into a Ghost Rider and go around punishing criminals. With the current technology, it is not difficult for the police to track him down, but he has not been harassed. Johnny suddenly realized, is it you? Glad you are aware of this, Mr. Knight. Although you have attracted many admirers during this time, more have indeed caused panic. Tony's expression that you finally got the hang of it made Johnny quite upset. He knew it was good or bad. Although he was reluctant, he put down his legs and sat up straight. If you can find me, you should know my situation. I can't completely control that state, and I might shoot at any time. Don't tell me you haven't done anything wrong. Speaking of this, he glanced at Rogers, who was full of righteousness, and he paused to exclude it. Maybe you don't, but Tony, you? My eyes of judgment act on the soul. Even if you do something wrong, your soul will be burned. I don't think that armor of yours will hold up. Rogers spoke in a calm voice. But you still live with Ms. Rosie. I believe that a person who knows how to love has a stronger will than ordinary people. If you are really as dangerous as you said, then you're sure to stay away from Lady Rosie, aren't you? Tony shrugged. In fact, We have another member who is similar to you. But if you stare at people with your eyes, he will transform into a big green monster and use the most violent means to hammer people into pizza. That sounds scary. That's right. So he left his beloved for safety. Tony's words silenced Johnny. In his mind, he recalled what the old cowboy had said. No matter what created the vengeful spirit, no matter why you have it, you can always use it to do something for the world. At least send those demons back to hell. Keep war. Keep disaster away from those you care about. Johnny closed his eyes, and after a few seconds of silence, he opened them, and his eyes became different from before, more resolute. Jingle bell. Before Johnny could agree, the phone rang and interrupted his next words. He said sorry, and then took out the phone from his pocket. The name of Rosie was displayed on the phone, and he put the phone in his ear after connecting side. It was the other end who spoke first, but the voice was not Rosie's, but a strange male. Hey, is that Johnny Blazer? The voice was also a little anxious, which made Johnny feel something bad in his heart. I am. Who are you? Hungry. My name is Stuart. Do you remember? It's Rosie's partner cameraman. She is in a very bad situation, and now she is in Anderson Hospital. I'll go over now. Without waiting for the other end to finish speaking, Johnny hung up the phone, even ignoring Tony and Rogers, and hurriedly left the apartment. Tony and Rogers looked at each other and chose to follow. 10 minutes later, outside the intensive care unit of Sen Hospital, Johnny looked through the glass at the dying Rosie on the hospital bed. He couldn't believe his eyes. That Rosie, who was alive and kicking, now lost all blood on her face because of the pain. Oxygen tubes are plugged in the nose and mouth. Water? Lung tumor? Hearing what Stuart said, Johnny looked in disbelief. I remember that Rosie has to have a physical examination every year. Where did she get the lung tumor? I don't know. When she was processing documents in the company today, she suddenly passed out and had difficulty breathing. When we were sent to the hospital for examination, the doctor detected a tumor. Stuart spread his hands with the same confused expression. Can this tumor grow so fast? Generally speaking, even if it is a malignant tumor, there will be a sign. Before today, Rosie often traveled around for interviews, and she was still alive and kicking, healthy. Not far away, Tony and Rogers were listening, and they fell silent without disturbing Johnny. It's too unfortunate, Rogers sighed. I believe no one can bear the serious illness of his lover. Inside, he also dropped the idea of Johnny joining the Avengers. Tony touched his chin. Why do I feel something is wrong? He has an idea now. As a rich man, he also has a private medical team, and his status can completely allow Roxy to be transferred to the most advanced hospital in the United States for treatment. Glancing at Johnny, who was anxious like a volcano erupting at any time, Tony made a phone call and explained, then stepped forward and patted Johnny on the shoulder. The latter turned his head abruptly, and there was a gleam of fire in his eyes, which made Tony's heart bulge. Don't change this guy now. Fortunately, seeing that Johnny suppressed the mania in his heart, he opened his mouth quickly. Hey Johnny, don't be in a hurry. I've contacted the hospital with the most advanced medical preparations, and I'll transfer Rosie there first, and then I'll rush to formulate a plan for the tumor experts. Okay. Hearing the good news, Johnny nodded without hesitation, paused, and said hoarsely, Thank you. Tony patted Johnny on the shoulder. Everything will pass, man. The tumor is not incurable. Afterwards, he was transferred to another hospital and had a full body scan in the new hospital. Tony summoned oncologists from all over the United States as quickly as possible. According to Ms. Luoshi's physical examination, the location of the tumor is very bad. It is in the epithelium of the bronchial mucosa, commonly known as lung cancer. Now the tumor is 1 centimeter in size, and it has already squeezed the lungs, causing difficulty in breathing. The growth rate and the metastases are rapid, and in general, things are pretty bad. Outside the intensive care unit, an oncologist wearing a mask told a few people the bad news. Can that be treated effectively? Tony was straight to the point. In front of the banknotes, all resources are available, but the expert shook his head. I'm sorry, Mr. Tony, this tumor came very quickly, and it is even unique in the history of tumor diseases. The possibility of rescue is not great. As soon as these words came out, everyone fell silent. Johnny took a few steps back in a daze and sat on the chair by the wall, covering his head with pain on his face. Tony wanted to say something else, but Rogers stopped him. Let him be quiet. At night, the entire medical corridor was empty, only the intensive care room, where the doctors were tirelessly busy, scanning records and monitoring the tumor in Roxy's body. Johnny stood outside the door and looked at his lover through the glass window. His eyes gradually became moist. And percent. Chapter 99. The Hell Hunter and the Archangel. The pain in Johnny's heart almost twisted his heart. Rosie, whispering. He reached out and touched the glass. On the other side of the glass was the pale face of his lover on the hospital bed. When the expert told the worst news, he could hardly control the tyranny in his heart, and the only remaining reason was because of Rosie on the sickbed. He didn't even know if the last of his sanity would be broken if Rosie died. Just when Johnny was in pain, at this moment, the lights in the passageway of the entire ward kept flickering, and the flow rate of the surrounding space seemed to slow down. He saw the movements of the doctors nearly dozens of times slower, and the digital delay of the heart rate monitor. Beat. I saw the dazzling golden light falling from the ceiling of the passageway in the ward, and with the strands of light particles, a figure slowly fell from it out of thin air. The sudden movement made Johnny turn his head to look. His pupils shrank when he saw this figure. I saw that this person was wearing a retro-style armor, with a blue cloth battle skirt wrapped around his waist, neatly trimmed short hair, and a tough face. Most importantly, this person had a pair of pure white wings behind him. Angel. Johnny unconsciously spat out a word. He didn't expect that at this time, an angel would descend, which made the originally noisy thoughts even more chaotic. He didn't know why the July 27th Taoist angel came here. Was it to pick up Roxy's soul? Ghost Rider Johnny Blazer. My name is Maliki. The angel slowly floated more than 10 centimeters above the ground, looking down at Johnny in a condescending attitude, and slowly said, "Why are you here, Angel? I need your help, Knight. I'm not interested." At this time, Johnny has no interest in anything. He just wants to be with his lover. Faced with Johnny's veto, the angel Malachi looked through the glass at the dying woman on the bed in the intensive care unit. There was a smile in his eyes, but it disappeared soon. He proposed a proposal that Johnny could not refuse at all. Reason. As long as you help me, I can heal your love, Knight. Immediately after this condition, Johnny suddenly raised his head, his expression excited. Can you cure Roxy? Although I am the lowest and humble angel in heaven, it is not difficult to heal the fragile body of a mortal. Malachi said with a gentle expression. What do you want to do? Johnny couldn't refuse this proposal at all. This was his chance to seize the last straw. He would not let it go. Johnny looked up at the angel slightly and asked in a deep voice. Now in hell, there is a powerful, tyrannical, and bloodthirsty demon king who is about to break through the boundaries of and summon countless demons and undead in an attempt to change the world into his back garden. His name is Kazan. For this reason, both heaven and agents were sent to arrest him, namely Hell Hunter Huss and Archangel Luther. These two are very powerful, but they are both extremely dangerous people, especially the Archangel Luther, who is one of the most powerful among the angels. To achieve her goal, she will do whatever she can, even kill her. Angel Malachi slowly explained the reason for his arrival. Especially when talking about Huss and Luther, his expression obviously became a little disgusted. The three-way war will definitely affect the world, and I don't want the war to affect the world, and the lives will be burned. So, our deal is very simple. You help me capture Kazan, put him in hell, and I cure your lover's illness. Devil Kazan? Johnny's heart sank. The last demon king he encountered was Mephisto. He had witnessed the scene of Mephisto fighting the Saint Fighters. He never thought that he could reach the level of a demon king. The angel Malachi seemed to see Johnny's thoughts, and he said softly, "You underestimate yourself, Knight. When you fully release your own energy, you are an evil spirit that makes countless demons fear Knight. Although the Devil King is powerful, you do have the ability to capture him. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come to you." Malachi's words made Johnny think back to what old Carter had said to him. Anyone who dares to sell their soul for love has the power to change the world. Love is the most special and powerful force in this universe. Johnny let out a sigh of relief, and he agreed. Okay, I promise you to capture the Devil Kazan, but Rosie, don't worry before you catch Kazan. Rosie won't die, even. Angel Malachi pointed at the sickbed. A golden light. Smiley face. The beam pierced through the broken glass and sank into Rosie's body. Visible to the naked eye, Rosie's originally pale cheeks gradually returned to blood color, and even her breathing became calmer. Rossi, Johnny looked relieved. At this time, the figure of the angel Malachi also slowly floated up into the air, and as the golden particles disappeared into the ceiling, only a sentence was left behind. Your time is running out, Knight. I hope you can capture the Devil Kazan as soon as possible, but be careful. Kazan has no entity, I can't describe his image to you. He will descend on the earth. He will choose him to believe in him physically, with whatever is convenient, with whatever is available. As the voice fell, the originally slow flow of time became normal, and the flickering lights in the passageway of the ward stopped flickering. Johnny looked at the ceiling where Malachi disappeared in the passageway of the ward. His eyes were full of determination. And far away in a vast space, a dimension in reality and hell. On one of the barren planets, the angel Malachi floated in the sky, looked at the burning sun in the distance, and said softly, I already know the Ghost Rider. I believe that he will fight for the so-called stupid love and to capture Kazan. Ghost Rider, humph. The gap is too big, Malachi. On the surface of the planet below, the same angel stood, but unlike Malachi's blue armor, he was wearing red armor. I know, but I have no other choice. I can only let nature take its course. It is a foregone conclusion. All we can do now is wait and see. Huss and Luther have already started to act. Kazan is about to gain a physical body, and they will track his breath. The red armor angel said softly. Malachi was a little silent and nodded. Ghost Rider will also. He has a full advantage in speed. The red-armored angel showed a smile, raised his head slightly, and showed a face very similar to Malachi. All this is left to you to solve. Don't expect me to clean up the mess for you now. You know well, if you're not a pushover, you probably understand how horrible the missions we're on are, and you find satisfaction in completing them, and see what they bring you, Malachi. But because of this, I want to warn you that a great existence has appeared in the world, and her strength and power will break the balance of the situation. You're doing something very dangerous, Malachi. Malachi sighed softly. We have no more escape route. 10,000 years seems like it happened yesterday. The words in it made the red armor angel close his eyes. I sometimes ask myself why we are brothers. In the early morning, outside the ward, Tony and Rogers, who came to visit, heard an incredible piece of news. First of all, Rosie's condition, which had been rapidly deteriorating, began to stabilize. Then Johnny even talked about the deal with the angel Malachi and the fact that Kazan, the devil of hell, is about to break the dimension of hell. Shit, it's another demon king, and it's still implicated in heaven. This is really a hell. Tony couldn't help but spit out a sentence to hide the shock in his heart. But Tony quickly accepted this fact. After all, and the devil have appeared, and it is not surprising that there are multiple heavens and angels. Tony also specially mobilized the monitoring of the ward, but found nothing, only saw that Johnny seemed to be talking to himself. If he hadn't detected a very strange and powerful energy frequency here, he would have wondered if it was Johnny's hallucination caused by excessive sadness and pain. Rogers was full of dignity at this time. From Johnny's words, it was not difficult for him to hear that a catastrophe was about to usher in the world at this time. The battle between and heaven was already divorced from reality. The war between gods and demons, how many times would there be? Innocent people suffer as a result. We have to do something, Tony. Action is of course action, but the question is, where should we go to find that demon king? Jarvis has already hacked into the U.S. military satellite, monitoring the whole world in real time, and found nothing abnormal at all. Tony spread his hands helplessly. Expression. Although they knew that the demon king Kazan was going to break the dimension, they had no choice. Not to mention that they didn't even know where the passage to was, and even if they found the gate to hell, would it be possible for them to break into hell? Is that where the living can enter? While the three were talking, suddenly Jarvis's voice came from Tony wearing a tiny earphone. Sir, a high-frequency energy was detected in a building called Guslov in Dallas, and the energy is highly similar to the frequency detected by Mephisto. Although it is coming from tiny headphones, whether it is Johnny or Rogers, the senses have already surpassed ordinary people. Tony raised his right wrist, flicked on the exquisite watch, and saw a blue light and shadow coming from the watch. The screen on the holographic projection has already appeared in front of the three of them. In the picture, in a towering building, there are inhuman roars and screams, and flames are slowly pouring out from the bottom of the building. When he saw the flame, Johnny's eyes flashed a light. That's the fire of hell. Kazan is about to break the dimensional boundary. He immediately identified Kazan's location. Without any hesitation, wisps of blue smoke emerged from his body, and a low and hoarse voice came from his mouth. Boom! In the next second, his flesh and blood were burned by the fire of hell, and his whole body turned into a skeleton, burning with raging flames. Ghost Rider was born. But when Tony saw him, he couldn't help being surprised. Can you transform into a knight during the day? The Ghost Rider turned his head to look at Tony. The eyes of the skeleton glowed with fire, and the familiar manic voice came from his throat. Night, it is never limited to day or night. The flames were reckless, and Johnny turned into a ball of fire, rushed through the corridor of the ward, smashed the window sill at the end, and fell towards the downstairs. And just right, when he was about to fall to the ground, a cool Harley motorcycle had automatically come under him. Bang! He stepped on the Harley locomotive, and Hellfire changed its shape into a Harley with a ghost face. With his manic screams and the roar of the engine, the locomotive disappeared at the end of the road. Chapter 100. Killing Angel Luther on a desert road, surrounded by rocks and yellow sand. Ghost Rider Johnny drove his ghost motorcycle on the road at high speed, drawing a long line of fire along the way, at a terrifying speed. However, just ahead, a red vintage convertible was seen, with country music playing from it. The driver of the convertible was a fat man wearing a light red round cap and a beach top. On the co-pilot, there was a man without a head holding a can of beer. Because he had no head, he could only whimper. Fatty was still immersed in the world of music. The sudden roar of the engine and the sound of the sonic boom made him feel the danger, and the red car was thrown aside. Fortunately, Fatty's driving skills are very good, and he stabilized the car in a few strokes. The fat man's face became gloomy, and he looked at the fast-running skeleton knight in front of him. Damn it, you dare to provoke me, huh? I seem to know that guy. He quickly stepped on the accelerator, and a surge of energy drove the speed of the convertible to soar once again when it had reached the threshold. It was only in an instant that he followed Johnny the Ghost Rider. Side by side with the locomotive, the fat man put one hand on the steering wheel and the other casually on the door. He turned his fat head and looked at Johnny. Hey, buddy, why did you appear here? You shouldn't have been killed by the devil. Is Mephisto on target? Also, you have to apologize to me for almost knocking me over just now, the fat man babbled. You know me? Johnny turned his skull and looked at the fat man. Ah, Ghost Rider has a good reputation in hell. You and I are just meeting each other for the first time. What are you doing here? Fatty held out his palm like you were famous in 16. Johnny didn't bother to pay attention at all, and replied indifferently, None of your business. The fat man chuckled. Don't be so indifferent, buddy. You are a knight and I am a hunter. No matter how you look at it, we are all the same kind of people, serving for the great hell. Hearing the word hunter, Johnny immediately reacted. Are you Huss? Aha, you've heard of me. Before the fat man finished speaking, he saw Johnny spitting hellfire at Huss. In an instant, the entire convertible, including the fat man, was engulfed by the flames of hell. Johnny saw the unmanned cowboy on the co-pilot. He reached out and grabbed the other person and put him on the back seat of his motorcycle. But Fatty's car immediately lost control, rushed out of the road with billowing flames and thick smoke, and crashed into the yellow sand and weeds not far away. Amidst the thick smoke, the fat man cursed angrily. My Falk, the vast and great lord, did I explode that guy's immature ass? What did I do to him? He wants to do this to me. And Johnny, who was scolded by the hunter Huss, drove the locomotive all the way to a kilometer away. On the way, Johnny said without turning his head, Sit still, buddy. I promise it won't hurt in a while. The latter is a headless cowboy with a smoking scalded by hellfire and whimpering. Your head was taken off by him? Well, no. What a poor fellow. Johnny horse. But at this moment, the roar of the engine came from behind, and Johnny turned his head suddenly and saw the pitch-black convertible was already speeding towards him. Johnny's eyes were burning with fire. I absolutely cannot allow anyone to hinder my transaction. Johnny stepped on the ground with one foot to brake. The friction between the tire and the ground made a screeching sound. The headless cowboy behind him was thrown by the inertia and fell heavily into the yellow sand in the distance. The headless cowboy pulled himself out of the yellow sand. Sadly, he came out, looked into the distance, and made a resentful voice. I'm sorry, buddy. I'll help you after I've settled the matter. In the distance, Johnny said a word without looking back, then increased his horsepower and galloped towards the fat man's convertible. Boom, boom, boom. The power of the spirit of vengeance has already recovered, and the terrifying speed driven by it has reached the speed of sound. The locomotive is speeding on the road, and the air waves brought by the wind resistance will split the road surface. Seeing the angry ghost knight rushing towards him, the fat man, who was originally burned by the fire of and turned into a skeleton in the thick smoke, has regained his flesh and blood visible to the naked eye. The fat man grinned. You skeleton bastard. Don't you know that I have to repaint the car? When Huss was about to make a move, he saw the knight Johnny, who was already approaching, reach out and pull out the chains wrapped around his body, and swung hard. The chain cut through the air like a poisonous snake and precisely wound and locked Huss' fat body and neck. Then Johnny flicked the faucet, and the fat man was thrown flying with a huge force and hit the road ground heavily. Johnny didn't even look at it and continued to gallop towards Dallas, while Huss' body was just like that on the ground. Friction. However, Huss did not feel the slightest harm. Instead, he continued to chatter. "It's full of surprises, isn't it, buddy? Your methods are so good that even I was careless." It's just that Johnny didn't care about it at all and just drove away. Huss was angered by Johnny's indifference. "You'll like this move." I saw the flesh and blood squirming under the open belly of Hood's beach suit, and a huge octopus-like tentacle suddenly emerged from it and instantly locked the front of Johnny, who was driving the motorcycle. Neck, and lifted it up directly. Rumble, the locomotive that lost its owner, continued to run forward, but fortunately, it braked and stopped immediately as if it was alive. Johnny was locked in midair by the tentacles and kept shaking. Huss laughed wildly. "I believe that this move will make you feel scared, Knight." Boom! The huge force caused the tentacle to grab Johnny and throw it heavily on the ground, smashing the road into a deep hole. Johnny reacted extremely fast, and the power of the spirit of the Avengers continued to emerge in his body. Terrifying, the flames burned the tentacles wrapped around him. He stood up and looked at Huss, who also got up not far away, and the chain between the two was tightly connected. Huss' fat muscles squirmed, but he still couldn't break the chains on his body. He helplessly yelled at Johnny. "What the are you doing? Is there something wrong with your brain? Don't pretend to be innocent, Huss. You are a demon from hell, a puppet in the abyss. I know exactly what you do. You're blocking my way." Johnny moved his jaw up and down and said hoarsely. Huss was a little depressed, just about to speak, but suddenly turned his head to look at the road ahead. "Wait a minute, that's—" Johnny also followed Huss' gaze and saw a bus driving on the road ahead. Johnny suddenly noticed that there seemed to be something in that car, and the two looked through the window. Seeing the woman in a suit in the driver's seat, her eyes were piercingly cold, making one shiver uncontrollably. The two couldn't help shouting at the same time. "Luther?" After calling Huss, I was puzzled. "Huh? How do you know her?" "It shouldn't be. I know she is a killing angel." "Huss, let go of my chains." Seeing Huss grabbing his chain, Johnny said angrily. "If they don't let go, the two of them will definitely be hit by a bus." Smiley face. However, Hussey took it for granted. "Of course you let me go first." In the midst of the entanglement between the two, the bus ran into the two with a ferocious momentum. At the last moment, the two ran towards the two sides tacitly, and the chain instantly caught the front of the bus. With a distorted sound, the bus was thrown away by the chains and fell towards the yellow sand and weeds not far away. Boom! There was a terrifying and huge roar, and the bus rolled several times on the yellow sandy ground, rolling up the yellow sand all over the sky. Johnny looked at the scrapped bus in the yellow sand. His eyes sparkled with fire. Damn it! He saw that there were many people in the car. Just this one. I'm afraid many people will die. Huss broke free from the chain, turned his head and sighed. That girl is too cruel and merciless. Seeing the abandoned bus paralyzed in the yellow sand, a woman who could wear a gray lady's suit walked out of it with a cold face, ignoring the wailing inside the bus. "This woman is probably trying to kill us." Huss patted his chubby belly with disdain on his face, and then squinted at Johnny. "You are not chasing a target like me, are you? How do I think she is trying to reduce the posture of the competitor?" Johnny was silent. He slightly raised his head and looked towards the sky. At this time, a special fighter jet passed by in the sky, followed by a steel armor, with plasma flames spraying from his hands and feet, following behind. "Tony, are they here?" Tony, who was flying at high speed in the sky, scanned through thermal imaging, looked down, and saw the panoramic view of the road. Natasha's voice came from beside her ear. "Tony, pay attention to that female 727. The energy index on her body is quite amazing, and there are many people in the bus." Tony turned his gaze away, and suddenly his pupils shrank. He saw the woman grabbing the bus chassis with one hand, holding onto the chassis with a strong grip, and seeing the driver, whether it was Johnny, Huss, or Tony Natasha, he instantly understood what she was going to do. "Not good, Tony, damn. Jarvis, boost the thruster power to 100%. Bang! Following the sonic boom, the red armor cut through the air and flew downward. Sure enough, the next second, Luther grabbed the bus and slammed it hard like Johnny and Huss. There was a shrill scream from the bus. "Ah, help. No, I don't want to die yet." Although Tony was fast enough, it was still not enough to catch up. He could only watch the bus fall towards Johnny and Huss, and Johnny grabbed the chain decisively and swung it hard. The long chain continued to lengthen, just wrapped around the outer shell of the bus. Accompanied by the flames, Johnny swung the bus vigorously, removing most of the power. At this time, Tony arrived. Through Jarvis' precise calculation, he caught up with the bus spinning in midair, and then gradually exert force on the lower plate of the bus to reduce the speed of rotation. Slowly holding the bus, it landed on the yellow sand not far away. After getting off the bus, Tony stepped on the yellow sand, looked into the bus through the front automatic door, and immediately sank in his heart. Jarvis, call the doctor immediately and send them the location to get here as soon as possible. Tony, what's going on? In the ear, Roger's voice came. Tony walked into the bus and shook his head. The situation is very bad. 5 people died, and 7 people suffered from internal organ damage and lost a lot of blood. The rest have not yet affected their lives, but to varying degrees. There was an immediate silence on the other end. Tony squatted in front of the crowd, opened his mask, and comforted the severely wounded person while freezing the wound to stop the bleeding. I have already called an ambulance, and they will be here soon. Don't panic.